If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 1. Look, it's that kid again. I heard he was making a scene on the street again. What a nuisance. I really don't understand why the Hokage still keeps this troublemaker around. They should have dealt with him already. After all, he is a FO. SHHH. Have you forgotten what can and can't be said? TCH. Whatever. Just ignore him from now on. And we need to remind the kids not to play with him. He's too dangerous, who knows when he might suddenly. Dozens of mouths, spewing cold words in the heat of summer. Dozens of eyes filled with indifference, even resentment. The little blonde boy walking down the street lowered his head, at a loss for what to do. He looked like he wanted to explain, but couldn't find the words. In the end, he could only leave with a lonely silhouette. Natsuki stood quietly behind the crowd, silently watching little Naruto walk away. He then looked up at the Hokage rock. The stone faces of the 4 Hokage seemed to be silently watching over the village. As expected. I've really come to the world of Naruto. This is Konoha. Judging by Naruto's appearance, he's about 5 or 6, same as me. Looks like there's about 6 years until the main story begins. With that thought, Natsuki decisively turned and headed home. His house was in a relatively remote area of the village, far from the bustling streets. It took him quite a while to walk back. There weren't many people living in this area. It wasn't as lively as the marketplace, but the houses here had more space. Most families had their own little yard. Natsuki pushed open the wooden gate to his yard. His eyes swept across the vegetable patch. The greens were thriving in this season, fresh and vibrant, mouth-wateringly tender. In another corner of the yard, cured meat was hung out to dry on a rack, surrounded by fishing net to ward off birds and cats. Beneath the wall, slices of sweet potato were sun-drying, and 2 strings of orange peels hung above the window. It all felt surreal. Planting vegetables in the yard, making cured meat and dried sweet potatoes, even collecting orange peels, this is clearly something ingrained in my DNA. Maybe I was actually born here and just temporarily lost my memory. All of this was instinctive. And only yesterday, after extracting chakra, did my memories awaken. Natsuki remembered it clearly. He had recently passed the entrance exam for the Ninja Academy and had received his acceptance letter. So these past few days, he had been training hard. It wasn't until last night that he successfully extracted chakra for the first time, then immediately passed out. After that, it was like he had a dream, one full of memories from his previous life. To confirm his suspicions, he ran to the town center early this morning. The Hokage rock was unmistakable. He also found familiar places like Ichiraku Ramen, Barbecue Q, Yamanaka Flower Shop, and Mantendu Ninja Tool Store, all iconic locations from the anime. He even saw little Naruto just moments ago, which confirmed everything. Not only that, he now had a general grasp of the timeline. Looking at all the familiar things in his yard again, Natsuki figured he hadn't taken over someone else's body, these memories really were his own. And with that realization, he finally felt a bit more at ease. Still, that was just a psychological comfort. It wasn't the most important thing. What truly mattered was that he had arrived in this dangerous world. As we all know, the Naruto world is filled with danger and madness. One wrong move and the sky comes crashing down. People lose their humanity on a regular basis. When you're watching the anime, it's all passion and emotion, but actually living in it, he couldn't help but tremble. Thankfully, this world had a destined savior. So, the destruction of the world wasn't his problem. As long as he gave up the idea of being the savior, respected fate, and let the chosen one do their job, he could simply focus on living his life well. No need to overthink the rest. With that, Natsuki laid down the guiding principle for his survival. Then he hurried to close the gate and rushed back into the house to dig through his parents' belongings. There wasn't much, just a scroll of notes, 2 kunao, 10 shuriken, 1 ninja tool pouch, and 10,000 ryo in Fire Country currency. The scroll contained basic knowledge, how to extract chakra, the 3 basic jutsu, and some throwing techniques for kunao and shuriken. Nothing too valuable. There was no helping it, Natsuki's father had been an ordinary genin. Average skills. Good with tools and the 3 basic jutsu. He was lucky to survive the Nine Tails incident, but later died on an escort mission. He didn't leave much behind. Word was the enemy had already been dealt with, so there wasn't even a revenge arc waiting. Back then, Natsuki had only been 3 years old. His mother had been a civilian. When she heard of her husband's death, she was heartbroken. She did her best to raise Natsuki until he was 5, then passed away herself. Classic orphan beginning. Gotta love the accuracy of the Isekai setup. But perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. In such a twisted and dangerous world, having fewer attachments might actually help one survive longer. If he ever became a missing nin someday, at least he wouldn't have to worry about family back home. Of course, humans are social creatures. Long-term loneliness isn't sustainable. So making some friends or even finding a partner might not be such a bad idea down the road. Natsuki glanced over the scroll again, then quickly set it aside. He'd read this thing so many times already that he could recite the 3 jutsu hand seals backwards in his sleep. What he needed now was more practice. He packed the scroll and the ninja tools back into the pouch. But when he picked up the 10,000 ryo, his face twitched. 1 ryo equals 10 yen. So 10,000 ryo equals 100.000 yen. 100,000, and then what? A simple bowl of Ichiraku ramen costs around 60 ryo. If he ate 3 meals a day, each being 1 bowl, he wouldn't even last 2 months. How's anyone supposed to survive like that? Oh, right, orphans get subsidies. Less than 2,000 ryo a month. Just enough to not starve. Sure, I won't starve, but a kid's growth depends on proper nutrition. No nutrition means poor physical development. Poor development means less chakra. Less chakra means no future. And while I don't expect to become some great hero, if I can't even reach cage level, then wasn't this whole transmigration a waste? Natsuki frowned and put the money away, already thinking about ways to earn more. He refused to suffer. And he definitely didn't want to live like Naruto, barely scraping by, not even able to eat well. Naruto at least had his Uzumaki physique and the 9 tails to power him up. But with nothing but instant noodles, ramen, and expired milk? No wonder he turned out short. Any other kid would have died from malnutrition. Just imagining a life of instant noodles and ramen made Natsuki shudder. For someone with a Chinese soul, that kind of life was a nightmare. But damn it, I'm only 6. How am I supposed to make money at 6? He cursed internally. Thank God I remembered how to plant vegetables and make preserved food before awakening my past life memories. Otherwise, I'd never be able to support myself. But now that I'll be attending the Ninja Academy soon, my training will only get harder. I'll need even more nutrients. The way I've been eating until now won't be enough. I really need to figure out a way to make some money. Chapter 2. While thinking things over, Natsuki pulled up some garlic sprouts and cut slices of cured meat to make himself a stir-fried garlic sprout and bacon dish. It tasted amazing. But even after finishing his meal and washing the dishes, Natsuki still hadn't come up with a good way to earn money. He could only toss the annoying thoughts aside for now. After all, he still had 10,000 ryo, enough not to starve for the time being. He could figure out the rest later. Right now, he was really fascinated by chakra and ninjutsu. After all, what kind of otaku could resist becoming a superpowered being? Without thinking much about it, Natsuki sat cross-legged and began extracting chakra. His technique was already incredibly smooth, and soon he could feel a faint stream of unique energy flowing through his body. But in the next moment, his mind blanked and he suddenly vanished from the house. When he regained awareness, he found himself in a vast, white space. This space seemed endless. Natsuki had been tossed in as if abandoned by the world itself. But he didn't panic because as soon as he arrived, a stream of information appeared in his mind. Infinite Gravity Training Room Manual. The user can enter and exit the training room at will through thought alone and can freely control the gravity and even the environment inside to assist in training. Note: don't set gravity too high in the beginning. If you get crushed to death, we're not responsible. A free bloodline enhancement serum is included. It will increase the user's special bloodline purity. The current Senju bloodline is at 5%, after use, it will rise above 50%. Note: enhancing the bloodline will reconstruct the body. It'll be painful, please endure it. A free gift of 100 Senzu beans. Originating from Dragon Ball, each bean can sustain a person for 10 days and instantly restore them to peak condition. Note: use them wisely. They do not work on soul damage. On the 1st of every month at 7 p.m., the training room will enter special laboratory mode. During this time, the user will have unlimited stamina and chakra and won't take any damage. Note: this state lasts for 10 hours. Please make the most of it. The manual was short and clear, but Natsuki still read it several times, unable to suppress the smile tugging at his lips. Finally, he burst into laughter. To be honest, he'd been worrying about his lack of talent, but he didn't expect his system to activate so soon. He guessed that successfully extracting chakra must have triggered the system, which in turn awakened his memories of his past life. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that now that he had a system, his future was guaranteed. Even if he couldn't kick 6 Paths Madara around or crush Princess Kaguya, reaching beyond cage level was well within reach. Most importantly, 100 senzu beans equals 100 lives. No matter how many disasters come his way, he'd survive. And only by surviving could he laugh his way through the ninja world. What surprised Natsuki most was discovering that he had senju blood. Thinking it over carefully, it actually made perfect sense, and he had Hashirama to thank for it. Back then, Hashirama had promoted the idea of senju marrying into the village, spreading their bloodline among the population. Although the clan had now declined or disappeared entirely, it led to many geniuses being born in Konoha. So, ordinary villagers having senju blood wasn't surprising. Even if Natsuki only had 5%, it meant he wasn't some talentless nobody. But now, with the enhancement serum, that 5% would become over 50%. Chakra would go from a trickle to a torrent, definitely a genius level starting point. This is how transmigrators should be. As for the special lab mode, it was obviously made for developing ninjutsu or experimenting. With unlimited chakra, unlimited stamina, and immunity to damage, there was no better environment for testing dangerous techniques. The only reasons ninjutsu are hard to develop are because they either require too much chakra or the process is too risky. But this room would remove all those limitations every first of the month. Natsuki could do whatever he wanted in there. If he couldn't come up with something powerful, he'd be ashamed. This system is perfect. But today isn't the first, the next one is in 2 days, which is also the start of school. The lab mode is limited time, so I need to seriously plan what to work on, otherwise it'll be wasted. For now, I'll just set a reasonable gravity level for regular training. I'm still young, and too intense a workout might break me. Even with senzu beans, they're life-saving items. I can't afford to waste them during regular training. With that, Natsuki made up his mind. He used his thoughts to summon a senzu bean and examined it, wondering if he could plant it someday. Maybe he'd give it a shot when he had time. Then he took out the bloodline enhancement serum, and without hesitation, injected it into his arm. As soon as the shot was done, his entire body felt like it was on fire. A moment later, intense pain surged through him, as if his bones, blood, and organs were being shattered and reconstructed. It was excruciating. But he clenched his teeth and endured. The manual had clearly said to please endure, which probably meant the longer you could endure, the better the results. He couldn't be sure, but he didn't dare risk it. If he passed out too quickly and the result was worse, wouldn't that be a huge loss? Unfortunately, he couldn't hold on. It was too painful. He ended up fainting in spectacular fashion. Who knew how much time passed before he finally woke up? His mind was still foggy when a message appeared in his head. Senju bloodline enhancement complete. Current purity, 80%. 80%, hey? Not bad. Maybe if I held out a bit longer, I could have reached 90. TCH, so lame. He grumbled at himself, but quickly cheered up. 80% was still amazing, way better than the measly 5% he had before. That kind of foundation surpassed most people in Konoha. With the training room to assist, reaching cage level was practically guaranteed. And with enough effort, going beyond maybe even to 6 paths level was within reach. If Guy could kick 6 paths Madara into the dirt, then he could show up afterward and land the finishing blow. That'd be a perfect ending. And if Kaguya dared show up? He'd drag her down and make her eat the dirt. The more he thought about it, the more he smiled. His eyes sparkled. He tried extracting chakra again. The surge of energy flowing through his body shocked him. It was vastly more than before. As expected of the Senju bloodline chakra for days. He didn't know how many cards he had now, but it had to be a lot. And he was only 6 years old. Chakra would continue to grow with age. By the time he graduated from the academy, who knew how much he'd have? It might even rival Naruto's. Shaking his head, Natsuki pushed those thoughts aside and began practicing the 3 basic jutsu. Chapter 3. Swish. 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 Natsuki formed hand seals with a serious expression. Bunshin no Jutsu. Poof. Success. Henge no Jutsu. Poof. Success. Kawarimi no Jutsu. Poof. Success. Natsuki was momentarily stunned. It was his first time actually performing the 3 basic jutsu, and yet he succeeded on the very first try. It seemed that the enhancement of his Senju bloodline hadn't only increased his chakra reserves, but also elevated his innate talent. Who could compare to that? Still, Natsuki didn't get cocky. It's just the 3 basic jutsu. Every genius masters them instantly, right? Even that famous weasel, aka Itaki, from the Uchiha clan had mastered Katon, Gaki no Jutsu on his first try. In comparison, this little feat of his didn't seem all that impressive. Now that I've learned the 3 basic jutsu, I technically meet the graduation requirements. But I still have to attend the Ninja Academy. After all, the academy didn't just teach chakra extraction and basic jutsu, it also offered a variety of essential knowledge. Like the history and geography of the ninja world, the development of Konoha village, math, physics, chemistry, biology, and most importantly, professional training, tracking skills, clue analysis, stealth, trap setting, rope escape, and more. These foundational skills were crucial. Without them, one had no business becoming a ninja. Oh, right, Naruto was a special case. A lovable idiot. But he was the protagonist, and a Jinchuriki, practically unkillable. Try swapping him out with a background character who couldn't even detect a basic trap, they'd be dead before they made it to graduation. Even Tsunade's little brother died to a trap, what chance would anyone else have? Natsuki didn't overestimate himself. He valued the academy's teachings. Even after completing all the material, there was always the library, so much to learn. Either way, early graduation wasn't an option. More importantly, Konoha was dangerous. Especially during this period before the Uchiha clan massacre. It was the peak of Danzo and Root's shady influence. If you thought Danzo was too busy dealing with the Uchiha to notice others, you'd be gravely mistaken. Root's would release experiments never stopped. Danzo had a constant need for test subjects. If he ever found out a child with high Senju bloodline purity existed in the village, he'd definitely make a move. Not even the 3rd Hokage could stop him. So, if you wanted to stay alive, you had to lay low. Acting average? Easy. Who couldn't? All he had to do was hold out until graduation. By then, Root would have lost its purpose following the Uchiha massacre, and the 3rd Hokage would disband it. Danzo wouldn't dare act recklessly anymore. Only then would things be relatively safe. Natsuki shook his head, clearing away those chaotic thoughts, and focused fully on training the 3 basic jutsu. Learning them was one thing, but mastering them was another. And in real combat, mastery mattered most. Once he became proficient enough to use them without hand seals, he could truly catch enemies off guard. So more training would only benefit him. Can't go without seals just yet, but maybe I can start working on one-handed seals. And since the 1st of the month is coming up, the day of the special lab mode, I'll make that my first research project. First step: refine chakra control. After all, the point of hand seals was to direct chakra to flow and change along specific routes to activate a technique. So, the finer and more precise your control over chakra, the less chakra you'd need to use and the fewer seals would be necessary. Just like Hashirama, clap your hands, and boom, jutsu happens. So how to improve chakra control? Isn't that an open book test? Tree climbing and water walking, of course. With a thought, Natsuki manifested a massive towering tree hundreds of meters tall. In this gravity training room, the environment changed according to his will. Making a tree was child's play. Ah, too bad I can't create living things. Otherwise, I'd summon 10 Kamisato Ayakas right now. He cracked a joke, then focused chakra to his feet and began sprinting up the tree. Naturally, it didn't take long before he fell. Too much chakra was actually hard to control. Like holding a cup of water easy. But trying to grasp an entire tank? Nearly impossible. Luckily, his talent had really improved. After a few more tries, he could casually stroll up and down the tree with his hands in his pockets. It felt amazing. He willed a whole forest into existence and dashed through the woods like a nimble little mountain dog. Looks like my talent really is top tier. Even better than Sasuke. I picked up tree climbing in no time. Next, water walking. With another thought, he conjured an endless ocean and leapt onto its surface. At first, he couldn't help but misstep into the water, soaking his shoes. But soon he got the hang of it, running, jumping, even flopping around on the water like a child playing. To spice it up, he made the water surge violently, increasing the challenge of maintaining his footing. He trained like this for who knows how long. Only when his stomach growled did he reluctantly leave the gravity room and return home to cook. Trained for 8 hours straight, and I'm not even tired. Despite the constant chakra consumption, I still have reserves left. Senjua bloodline really is overpowered. But a new problem arose. His appetite had tripled. That 10,000 ryo might not last even a month. Natsuki stared at the empty dishes he'd polished off all by himself, eyes twitching. He wanted to ignore the money problem, but reality didn't care. If he didn't figure something out soon, he'd be starving. As evening approached, Natsuki hurried out to collect the cured meat and dried sweet potatoes from the yard. The shiny cuts of meat made him think Japan's food culture didn't really have cured meat. Probably the same in the Naruto world. Maybe. I can sell the recipe? But who would I sell it to? And even if I did, it'd just be a one-time deal, not exactly sustainable. Feeling a bit discouraged again, Natsuki cleaned up and returned to the gravity training room. For now, he'd focus on researching one-handed seals. The 10,000 ryo would last a few more days. Money could wait a bit longer. The next 2 days passed quickly. During that time, aside from going out to buy vegetables and meat, Natsuki practically lived in the gravity room. By the end of the 2 days, his hand seal speed had skyrocketed. He could now perform 4 seals per second at full speed. Not as fast as attack as legendary 6 seals per second, but still respectable. But the purpose of seal training wasn't just speed. It was to understand how chakra flowed during each technique, to master the internal changes, not just get flashy. On the first of the month, he'd attempt one-handed seals that replicated the same chakra flow. If successful, he could cast basic jutsu with one hand. But he wouldn't risk it now. Chakra was like internal energy, messing it up could cause serious internal injuries. Better to wait for special laboratory mode, safe, stable, and the perfect time to test risky techniques. Chapter 4. Today was the first day of Ninja Academy. After finishing breakfast, Natsuki headed out alone toward the academy. On the way, he passed by many parents walking their noisy kids to school, chattering non-stop, making quite the ruckus. Of course, there were also some orphans, walking alone just like him. Natsuki didn't pay much attention. Once he arrived, he went straight to the bulletin board, found his assigned class, and casually scanned through the names of his classmates. Oho Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, Hyuga Hinata, Nara Shikamaru, Akime Ichichi, Yamanaka Ino, Harano Sakura, Inyazuka Kaiba, Abarame Shino. So I'm really in the same class as the future powerhouses, hey? That works. Time to build some connections. After all, Konoha's future leadership mostly comes from this bunch. It's best to form some early relationships. But of course, early friendships had to be approached carefully. Some people were okay to befriend now, others, better left alone. Take Uchiha Sasuke, for example. The Uchiha clan's relationship with the village was currently tense, and his older brother was unhinged. Getting too close to Sasuke might drag him into trouble. Then there's Naruto. He was a Jinchuriki, getting too friendly might draw attention from the third Hokage or Danzo. Not to mention, Naruto was a loud, hyperactive idiot. Befriending him might just make you dumber. And give you headaches. The rest? Harano Sakura and Yamanaka Ino were fangirls. Hyuga Hinata was too shy. Inyazuka Kaiba's dog liked to pee on everything. All pass. That left Nara Shikamaru, Akime Ichichi, and most importantly Abarame Shino. Among them, Shino was the most reliable. In the original story, Shino was always consistent, intelligent, strong in recon, defense, offense, protection, you name it. He also valued friendship deeply. He was definitely someone you could trust to watch your back. And really, who wouldn't want a dependable friend like that? So Natsuki quietly picked a spot off to the side, eyes scanning the crowd in search of Abarame Shino. But Shino's presence was so low, Natsuki couldn't find him even after searching for a while. Before he could locate him, the teachers began rounding up all the new students. Then, the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, appeared on a high platform, causing quite a stir. Hehe, hello children. I am the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. I'm very happy to be here with you all today. You are the budding leaves of Konoha, the future of our village, blah blah blah. The old man's speech was full of passion, and his eyes sparkled like he believed every word he was saying. The students below all looked excited. Natsuki inwardly rolled his eyes, but outwardly he had to put on a bright, excited expression. After all, kids in Konoha worshipped the Hokage and the will of fire. Acting out of line here would make him stand out in a bad way. Whether or not the will of fire was actually correct didn't matter. It was Konoha's political correctness. Everyone had to obey it. Or else. Expect a late-night visit from the Anbu for a little tea. Natsuki kept grinning so hard his face began to cramp, and the old man still wouldn't shut up. He was getting dangerously close to yawning in public. Seriously? All this just to say where the leaves dance, the fire will burn? You needed a full-on TED talk for that? Thankfully, the Hokage eventually wrapped up his speech. Natsuki quietly let out a sigh of relief and rubbed his stiff cheeks before following the crowd of new students to their classroom. Once there, he scanned the room and finally spotted a Aberame Shino. You'd think someone in a huge cloak and dark sunglasses would be easy to notice, but the entire Aberame clan had bizarrely low presence. You could be standing right next to one and still not notice. Probably something to do with their clan's insect-based techniques. Anyway, it wasn't worth overthinking. Shino was known to care about that low presence, so the least Natsuki could do was acknowledge his existence. He walked over confidently with a friendly smile. Hey, is this seat taken? Mind if I sit here? No games. No pretense. Just sincerity. Even if he had ulterior motives, as long as he was genuine, Shino wouldn't dislike him. Shino blinked behind his sunglasses, then nodded promptly. No one's sitting here. Go ahead. Cool. Guess we're desk buddies now. Natsuki sat down without hesitation, then pulled out a paper packet from his sleeve and offered it. I'm Natsuki. These are sweet potato slices I made myself. Want to try one? Food sharing, the most timeless friendship move. It didn't need to be anything fancy. Homemade food was more heartfelt, and someone like Shino would appreciate that more than any grand gesture. Shino glanced at the snack, then at Natsuki, who casually took one and started chewing. Then he reached out, took a slice, and popped it into his mouth. The mild sweetness made his usually calm expression soften a bit. I'm Aberame Shino. Pleased to meet you. And there it was, they were friends. Natsuki was in a great mood. He munched another slice when he suddenly felt a heavy stare. He turned only to jump at the sight of a pudgy face right behind him. It was a chubby kid with red spiral cheek marks, small eyes locked tightly onto the sweet potatoes. Who else but Akim Ichichi, the Eater Supreme? Behind him stood a spiky-haired boy with his hands behind his head, looking helplessly at his friend. Natsuki chuckled to himself. Bringing these snacks really was the right move. They attracted this duo to perfect timing to expand the friend circle. He offered the sweet potatoes. Want some? Yes. I do. Ichichi wasted no time snatching one and stuffing it in his mouth. A look of bliss instantly spread across his face. The sweet potatoes weren't even anything special, but for a foodie, anything tasty was happiness. And after eating chips all the time, a change of flavor was delightful. Shikamaru, seeing his partner go for it, also took one. Well, I guess I'll have one too. Thanks. Natsuki took the chance to introduce himself. I'm Natsuki. This is my desk buddy, also my new friend Shino. Oh, and since you've had some of my sweet potato, I guess we're all friends now. Shino gave a nod. I'm Aberame Shino. Nice to meet you. Nara Shikamaru. Akim Ichichi. The two boys also gave their names. No need for long introductions, names were enough for now. After handing out snacks all around, only one slice remained. Just as Natsuki was about to wrap it up, a pudgy hand shot out lightning fast, aiming for the last sweet potato. Natsuki grabbed the hand midair and grinned. Hey now, Ichichi, you can't just snatch the last piece. Ichichi narrowed his eyes. The last snack must go to me. That's my ninja way. Shikamaru sighed. Oh please, Ichichi. Yesterday you said any food that reaches my mouth must be eaten was your ninja way. Your way sure changes fast. Chapter 5. Ichichi's antics were amusing. But Natsuki had a good grasp of his character by now. This chubby guy was warm-hearted and kind. He had an almost sacred attachment to food. So long as you didn't call him a pig or try to steal his snacks, he'd be the easiest person to befriend. That said, the last piece of sweet potato still wasn't his. Natsuki pulled the paper packet back a little, smiling. Chchi, this is the last one. You want it, but so do I. I bet Shikamaru and Shino wouldn't mind having it either. I can't just hand it over to you. So how about we do rock paper scissors? Winner gets to decide what to do with it. Sound fair? Shikamaru groaned. Such a drag. It's just a piece of sweet potato. But Chji's eyes lit up with determination. The last snack? I won't let anyone else have it. I accept. I'll join too, Shino added quietly. It seemed to be his first time engaging in something like this, but he quickly got the hang of it. For someone like him, playing a game with new friends was a valuable experience. The four of them huddled in a circle and got ready. Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors. Haha. My scissors win. Natsuki grinned, holding up his hand in victory. Chji looked devastated, clearly not expecting to lose. As agreed, I get to decide the fate of this last piece. Natsuki pulled out a kunao and swiftly sliced the sweet potato into 4 pieces. There, now we all get some. Friends share, after all. Chji immediately brightened up, snatching his share and popping it into his mouth with glee. Shikamaru and Shino exchanged a glance and picked up their pieces as well. Childish as it may have seemed, the 4 of them had clearly grown closer through the interaction. Naturally, they started chatting. Chji was curious about the sweet potato, where Natsuki bought it, how it was made. When Natsuki said he made it himself and even shared the process, the simple conversation turned surprisingly lively. Just then, a stir broke out in the classroom. Uchiha Sasuke entered the room, his handsome little face and cool demeanor instantly causing a wave of squealing among the girls. Shikamaru scowled. Girls are such a drag. Natsuki met Shino's gaze and they both shrugged. Drag or not, they sure were loud. Only 6 years old, and already obsessed with pretty boys? Talk about early bloomers. Also, Sasuke really was full of himself. Probably learned that from his oh-so-glorious big brother. The very next second, a familiar loud voice echoed through the room. Uzumaki Naruto has arrived. From now on we're all classmates, let's get along, date Bayo. The moment he shouted, the entire class turned toward him. Many of them recognized him instantly. And even those who didn't could guess from the whisker marks on his cheeks. Whispers broke out at once. Some weren't even whispers, words like demon fox, annoying, and disgusting were tossed around freely. Even though Naruto had gotten used to this kind of treatment, he couldn't keep smiling this time. The grin on his face was cracking. He had probably really looked forward to today, thinking he could finally make friends with kids his own age. But reality slapped him right back down. Was he really going to be alone again? Could he ever gain acceptance? Thankfully, Irika arrived just in time and called everyone to take their seats. As he caught a glimpse of Naruto's lonely back, a flicker of complex emotion crossed Irika's face. There was some resentment in there, understandable, since he had lost his family the night of the Nine Tails attack, and Naruto was the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. But Irika was a kind man. He knew it wasn't Naruto's fault, and that contradiction only deepened his inner conflict. Ahem. Class, I'll be your homeroom teacher from today onward. Irika smiled warmly. Let's start with introductions. I'll go first to set an example. My name is Irika. I like eating at Ichiraku Ramen, and I don't really dislike anything. My dream is to be a great teacher. Alright, who wants to go next? Naruto shot his hand up. Me. Me. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I love Ichiraku Ramen, and I hate the waiting time before the noodles are ready. My dream is to become Hokage, date Bayo. The class exploded. A demon fox wanting to become Hokage? What a joke. Inyazuka Kaiba immediately barked, You? Become Hokage? The future Hokage is gonna be me, the great Inyazuka Kaiba. You probably won't even graduate from the academy. Others chimed in with their own Hokage dreams, making the room even noisier. Irika sighed, rubbing his temples. Alright, alright. I know everyone has great dreams, but let's go in order. I'll call names. Uchiha Sasuke, you're up next. Shing. All eyes turned to Sasuke. The girls looked like their eyes had turned into hearts. Well, except for Higa Hinata. Her eyes were currently sneaking glances at a certain blonde troublemaker. Sasuke stood up, face full of cool arrogance. I'm Uchiha Sasuke. I like dango. I hate idiots. My dream is to become a great ninja like my Nii-san. Wow! Sasuke-kun is so cool. I love you, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke-kun. Girls squealed and screamed. The boys rolled their eyes in disgust. Especially Naruto. He narrowed his eyes like a fox, glaring at Sasuke. TCH. What's the big deal? I'm totally handsome too. Why are they all fawning over that guy? He's not that great. So full of himself, bet he'd go down with one punch, date Bayo. Sasuke seemed to sense Naruto's death glare, glanced back, their eyes met and both instantly turned away with a mutual humph. The fated bond between Indra and Ashura had just been rekindled. Then came the rest of the introductions. I'm Yamanaka Ino. My family runs the Yamanaka flower shop. I love flowers of all kinds, and my dream is to become super popular. So troublesome. I'm Nara Shikamaru. I like sleeping. I hate trouble. Don't really have a dream. I'm Akim Ichichi. I love eating. I hate wasting food. And I hate being called fat. My dream is to one day eat all I want without ever working. I am Higa Hinata. I. She stumbled shyly over her words, but it was adorable. I'm Harano Sakura. I like. Glances at Sasuke, and my dream is. Another glance at Sasuke. Naruto's eyes lit up as he looked at Sakura. He remembered seeing her before. She wasn't like the others, she didn't look at him with hate. In that moment, Naruto fell hard. But watching the lovely Sakura keep glancing at Sasuke, Naruto felt like his lungs were about to explode. Chapter 6. Shino also gave his self-introduction. As expected, it was all about how he liked bugs. Naturally, both his appearance and his unusual interests made many classmates avoid him. Combined with his practically invisible presence, Shino was soon forgotten by most of the class. Natsuki noticed this and patted his deskmate's shoulder in a show of support. Then he stood up and said, I'm Natsuki. I don't really have anything I particularly like, and I don't hate much either. As for my dream, haven't thought of one yet. That's it. A name and not much else. Most of the class looked a bit speechless, but since Natsuki wasn't willing to share more, there wasn't anything they could do about it. Plus, he wasn't especially eye-catching, just a clean and neat face. Like Shino, he was quickly overlooked. That was fine with Natsuki. For now, he was focused on keeping a low profile. He just wanted to absorb knowledge, build a few useful friendships, and avoid trouble. After everyone introduced themselves, the teachers began handing out textbooks. As Natsuki had guessed, the curriculum included topics like the Will of Fire, the history of Konoha and the shinobi world, geography, math, physics, chemistry, biology, and of course, core ninja foundation classes. Of course, there were outdoor classes too, training in taijutsu, kunao and shuriken throwing, rope escape, trap setup, and mock battles. These were the most important, since the real purpose of the academy was to produce ninjas. And real ninjas lived and died by combat. Once the textbooks were handed out, class officially began. The first subject, reading. Yab. Reading and writing. This was a chaotic era, after all, and literacy was rare. Especially among 5 or 6-year-old kids. Many were orphans who barely knew any words at all. If you wanted to train a proper ninja, first you had to teach them how to read. Still, reading lessons wouldn't last long. The schedule was tight, and physical training couldn't be delayed. And with that, Natsuki's school life had officially begun. That afternoon, once classes ended, Natsuki said goodbye to Shino, Shikamaru, and Chichi, then hurried home, made a quick dinner, and began waiting for 7 p.m. to arrive. It was the first of the month, time for the special laboratory mode to activate. As soon as the clock hit 7, Natsuki activated the training room with a thought and stepped inside. The room looked the same as always, but it felt different. There was this odd sensation, like strength was limitless, like he was invincible, though it could have just been his imagination. He quickly brought up the timer, 10 hours remaining. Without wasting a second, he began his first research task, one-handed hand seals. Using Henge no Jutsu as a test case, he tried to mimic the chakra flow from two-handed seals using only one hand. 10 minutes in, sweat was pouring down his face. One-handed seals were vastly different from two-handed ones. Not only was finger flexibility an issue, but monitoring the internal chakra control at the same time was mentally exhausting. Fortunately, the special laboratory mode seemed to boost his stamina and mental focus. He calmed himself and resumed the attempts. He had no fear of injury or chakra drain. This was his greatest advantage right now. An hour passed. Natsuki completed a string of seals with his right hand and poof. He transformed into Shino. That's it. I did it. Natsuki stared at his reflection. As expected, special laboratory mode is amazing. No risk, no resource limits. With my above-average talent and solid chakra control from earlier, I learned one-handed seals in no time. Now I just need to train my left hand. Another hour passed. Natsuki scratched his head, realizing he'd underestimated himself. In just 2 hours total, he had mastered one-handed seals with both hands. It now felt as natural as breathing. Now what? I'm already good at this. No point grinding it more. But I still have 8 hours left. I really should have prepped more projects to research. Gotta make the most of this. After thinking it through, he made a decision. Train the Raise Nan. He had transmigrated into the world of Naruto. Besides the 3 basic jutsu, what else could he train right now if not the Raise Nan? Plus, the training method had been thoroughly shown in the anime. Each stage was clearly outlined. And with unlimited chakra and no risk of injury, this was the perfect time to attempt it. With a thought, a water balloon appeared in his hand. Time to begin the Raise Nan steps. Step 1. Gather chakra and form a spinning mass inside the water balloon without bursting it. Step 2. Increase power until the balloon bursts. Step 3. Switch to a rubber ball and burst that. Simple steps. Far from easy. But Natsuki's understanding was excellent, and his current state gave him the perfect training conditions. His progress was rapid. And 5 minutes before the lab mode ended, Natsuki successfully formed a Raise Nan in his palm. Boom! He pressed it against a thick tree trunk, blasting a clean hole through it. Haha! I did it! Finally made the most of these 10 hours. He was overjoyed. He played around with the Raise Nan for a bit longer until the mode ended, and only then did he feel a wave of fatigue wash over him. It was already 5 a.m. Chickens were starting to crow outside. Natsuki yawned. Staying up all night was brutal for a 6-year-old. He hadn't felt it while he was training, but now that the excitement had faded, exhaustion slammed into him like a truck. He left the training room, made breakfast, ate quickly, and by the time the sun was fully up, it was time for school again. No chance for a nap. He had to head out. He was the first one to arrive at class, and immediately slumped onto his desk and fell asleep. Who knows how long had passed? Hey, Natsuki! Wake up! Class is about to start. Shino gently nudged him. I'm awake, Natsuki mumbled. Except, he didn't move. Suddenly, his instincts flared. He snapped up his hand and snatched the incoming chalkboard eraser between 2 fingers. The whole class stared. Even Irika was momentarily stunned. Well, well. Pretty sharp there, sleepyhead, Irika said with a wry grin. Well, see. I was training late last night. Thought I was still in training mode. Got a little too used to reacting, sensei. Should I go stand outside for a bit? Natsuki asked with a sheepish grin. Chapter 7. Fortunately, Irika was a good teacher. He could tell that Natsuki wasn't lying. So he simply warned, "You're still young. Don't overdo your training, especially not at night. For now, stay focused in class and don't fall asleep again." Yes, sensei. Thank you, sensei. Natsuki thanked him sincerely, rubbing his face to wake himself up a bit more. After that, he listened carefully and even took detailed notes. Irika noticed this and, reassured, let it go. Once class ended, Natsuki let out a long yawn. Shino glanced over curiously. Did you really train that late into the night? Natsuki nodded mid-yawn. Yup. I got a little too excited and didn't stop. Before I knew it, the sun was almost up. Shino's curiosity only grew, but out of politeness, he didn't pry further. He didn't know what clan Natsuki came from, but if he was training all night without sleep, it had to be some kind of clan secret or special technique, not something polite to ask about. Natsuki, however, suddenly seemed to think of something. He turned to Shino and smiled. "Hey, Shino, do you get a decent allowance?" Shino was a bit puzzled but replied honestly, "Not a lot." "Why? If you're short on money, I can lend you some." Natsuki shook his head. "I'm not borrowing. I wouldn't be able to pay you back anyway. But how about this after school today, come by my place. I've got something I want to show you. You might even be willing to spend money on it. If not, that's fine too. I mainly want to treat you to dinner, you are my first friend, after all." "Alright." Shino agreed without hesitation. He was curious, of course, but since Natsuki didn't want to say anything yet, he respected that. More importantly, being invited to a friend's home and offered a meal especially by someone who considered him a first friend made him genuinely happy. That was more than enough. Before long, morning classes ended. Natsuki headed to the Hokage Tower to collect his monthly orphan stipend and ran into Naruto there, also picking up his money. As a gesture of goodwill, Natsuki gave him a small nod, a polite acknowledgement as classmates. Naruto's reaction was explosive. He beamed brightly and nodded back so enthusiastically he looked like a pecking chick. After being shunned for so long, a tiny gesture of kindness was like a miracle to Naruto. It made his whole day. As for Natsuki, even though Naruto was loud, impulsive, always shouting, and generally annoying, he was still just a pitiful kid. Right now wasn't the best time to befriend him, but there was no harm in being polite. The stipend was 1,800 Ry, just enough to afford a single bowl of Ichiraku ramen per day. Perfectly calibrated to make sure an orphan won't die of hunger. Ha! Natsuki pocketed the money and headed straight to Ichiraku. He'd heard about it so much time to see what the fuss was about. Naruto, who had finished picking up his stipend and was in a great mood, decided to treat himself to Ichiraku ramen for lunch. He entered the shop only to see Natsuki already seated there. "Hey, old man Tookie. One bowl of ramen please." Naruto plopped down right beside Natsuki and glanced over. "Hey, what's your name again?" "Back at the Hokage building, you nodded at me, right, Date Bayo?" Natsuki had just taken his first bite of ramen, 60 Ry a bowl. It tasted pretty decent. Not quite as amazing as Naruto always bragged, and it didn't exactly suit a Chinese palate, but for Konoha, this was probably the best you could get. After all, plenty of Jainin ate here, unless they were just coming to see Ayam. Yet, Tookie's daughter Ayam really was quite the beauty. Hearing Naruto's question, Natsuki gave a polite nod. "I'm Natsuki." That was just a friendly greeting between classmates. Naruto immediately grinned from ear to ear. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I'm gonna be the future Hokage, Date Bayo. You like Ichiraku ramen too? It's the best food ever, believe it. That's only because you've never had anything else. Grilled meat from Barbecue Q is way better." But Natsuki wouldn't dare say that out loud. Tookie was right there behind the counter. Say something bad about his ramen and you might get kicked out on the spot. Natsuki was already regretting giving Naruto a friendly nod. Just one little gesture, and the hyper kid latched on like glue. As expected, he was loud, nosy, and impossible to eat next to. Date Bayo, can you not for 1 second? Yeah, Ichiraku is the best," Natsuki replied half-heartedly. Right then, Tookie brought out Naruto's ramen, and his eyes crinkled into a smile. Who knows if those smiling eyes were hiding the Rinnegan underneath. Thankfully, Naruto finally shut up and started eating. He slurped down noodles like he hadn't eaten in days, and honestly, he probably hadn't. One bowl wasn't going to fill him up. Still, Natsuki wasn't about to play the good guy and offer to pay for more. They weren't that close. He was a broke orphan too. "I'm heading out." Natsuki finished his meal, cleaned his bowl, and left the ramen shop without a backward glance. Naruto looked up at his retreating back, his appetite suddenly fading. "Old man Tookie. Ayamne-chan, does Natsuki hate me too?" Despite his usual cheer, Naruto was incredibly sensitive. He'd thought that nod earlier meant he'd made a friend. But Natsuki hadn't waited for him, hadn't said goodbye. Maybe he was just another person who saw him as the demon fox? Ayam smiled gently. "Of course not. If he hated you, he wouldn't have bothered to talk to you. He looked super tired. I think he just went home to catch up on sleep." "Oh yeah. He was napping in class this morning." Said he stayed up all night training, so that's it. He's not mad at me, date Bayo. With that comforting thought, Naruto's appetite returned full force, and he resumed devouring his ramen. Natsuki, meanwhile, had no idea what was going on in Naruto's head. He strolled back toward the academy, stopping by the ninja tools store Nintendo to pick up a sheet of chakra paper. After successfully forming the Raise Nan last night, the next step was figuring out how to integrate his elemental chakra. First, he had to know what his chakra nature was. Back at the classroom, he infused chakra into the paper. In the next second, one part of the paper became damp, one part crumbled into dust, and another section crinkled up. Water, earth, and lightning, hey? Wonder what a water-based Raise Nan would look like? Can I even merge earth or lightning into it? It was a frustrating puzzle. He knew there was no use guessing, he'd have to test it himself. But such experiments were dangerous, and he'd have to wait until the next special lab mode on the 1st of next month. In the original story, Naruto's Rasen Shuriken was incredibly risky, even harmed him when he first used it. Natsuki wasn't about to take that kind of gamble. Even with his stash of senzu beans, they weren't infinite. There were only 100 and every single one had to be saved for life or death moments. Note to self, prep more research projects next time. No more last-minute scrambling like last night. Still deep in thought, Natsuki returned to class and promptly flopped down on his desk for a nap. Chapter 8. That afternoon was their very first outdoor class. Irika had everyone start with a 3,000 meter run to test the kids' physical base. Naruto, burning with competitive spirit, charged ahead with all his might, determined to leave Sasuke in the dust. But Sasuke, taking his glorious big brother as his role model, was just as determined to be number one in the class, especially when it came to Naruto. He simply couldn't lose to him. As for Natsuki, he ran leisurely in the middle of the pack, pretending to be tired while secretly enjoying the drama unfold like a soap opera. By the time the 3,000 meters were done, Natsuki barely had a drop of sweat on him. Naruto, meanwhile, had collapsed like a dead dog on the ground, barely able to breathe, and he didn't even place that well. See? Having Uzumaki vitality and the Nine Tails chakra doesn't mean much if you're malnourished every day. That body's way too frail. Naturally, first place went to Sasuke. The little pretty boy gave Naruto a smug glance, then stood coolly off to the side as the girls erupted into squeals and admiration. Naruto shot up in a rage. What's that Sasuke guy being so smug for, date Bayo? Natsuki, meanwhile, noticed something interesting among the girls. They had already split into factions, one led by Yamanaka Ino, another by Harano Sakura, and a few scattered cliques. While all of them were Sasuke fans, they clearly didn't get along with each other and looked ready to tear each other apart at any moment. Ino and Sakura used to be close friends, but now their friendship lay in ruins, shattered by their shared crush on Sasuke. They even started exchanging snide insults. It was quite the spectacle. And just as Naruto began trying to impress Sakura with a barrage of praise and goofy grins, Sakura rolled her eyes and stared only at Sasuke, clearly finding Naruto annoying. Oh, and over in the corner, a certain timid girl with white eyes was giving Naruto non-stop side eyes. Too bad Naruto didn't notice. These girls, such a drag, Shikamaru muttered, annoyed. Chichi crunched his chips, entirely ignoring the chaos around him. Natsuki and Shino exchanged glances and shrugged. Not their business. If it got too noisy, they could just cover their ears. Next up, kunai throwing practice. The kids from ninja clans had obviously trained before. Their accuracy wasn't bad at all. Especially Sasuke's shurikenjutsu was a signature skill of the Uchiha clan. Every throw hit the bullseye, which earned him another round of shrieking fangirls. Not to be outdone, Naruto started yelling again and tried to show off. The result? None of his kunai hit the target, and one of them almost neutered Irika, who promptly scolded him with a stormy face. Natsuki, meanwhile, ignored all the drama and followed Irika's instructions step by step. He also drew on the throwing techniques recorded in his father's scroll. At first, he barely hit the target, but with consistent practice, his accuracy rose steadily. A few even landed in the bullseye. His improvement was so noticeable that Irika gave him direct praise. Other students were envious, but what could they do? They wasted their time squabbling and posturing instead of focusing during class. Who else could they blame? After school, Natsuki took Shino shopping. They bought fresh meat and seasonings before heading to his house. This is my place. A bit out of the way, Natsuki said as he opened the gate. My parents passed away, so I live here alone. Grew some veggies out back for food. I'll go cook. Shino, could you help pick some vegetables? He really didn't treat Shino like a guest at all, which meant he wasn't treating him like an outsider. These plants look great, Shino said, complimenting the garden as he picked up a basket. He started plucking leaves as he added, the Aberame clan grows vegetables too for feeding our bugs. But yours look much healthier. Can I take a few leaves to feed mine? Go ahead. Natsuki responded casually. He'd already put the rice on, marinated the meat, and even chopped off a piece of cured pork. Only then did he finally free up his hands. Shino had finished picking the vegetables. He fed a tender leaf to one of his bugs. They didn't speak, but the atmosphere was peaceful. Even with his sunglasses on, Natsuki could tell Shino was genuinely happy. Maybe it was because he'd finally made a friend. Maybe it was because it was his first time being invited to a friend's house. Natsuki didn't beat around the bush. Shino, I actually stayed up all night researching one-handed hand seals. That's why I was so tired. One-handed, hand seals. Shino was visibly shaken. Even behind his glasses, you could feel his surprise. Everyone knew how rare one-handed seals were. Even elite Jainin rarely used them. Kakashi himself was stunned when he saw Haku do it during the Land of Waves mission. Someone who could do one-handed seals was undoubtedly a genius. And Natsuki was only 6 years old. A genius among geniuses. Natsuki lifted his left hand and performed several seals. Poof! He transformed into Shino himself with one hand. Shino couldn't deny it even if he wanted to. Natsuki, you're incredible. Natsuki smiled. I invited you over not just for dinner but to teach you one-handed seals. Not for free, though. The thing is, my appetite's grown a lot. Between my savings and the orphan stipend, I won't be able to make ends meet soon. So I figured, maybe you my friend could help out. Want to learn? I do. Just tell me how much. Shino agreed without hesitation. Honestly, he would have been happy to lend Natsuki money. He was Natsuki's first friend, after all. Even if Natsuki never paid him back, he didn't mind. He could tell Natsuki's situation was tough and genuinely cared about him. But he also understood Natsuki's pride. Natsuki wouldn't take a handout. That's why he offered something valuable in exchange instead. And really, learning one-handed seals was an incredible opportunity. It was more than worth it. A win-win. Natsuki scratched his head. Just give me whatever you think is fair. Enough to get through the next 2 months. I have no idea what it should cost. Shino thought about it. I'll ask my dad tonight. He should know what a fair rate is. I'll make sure neither of us gets shortchanged. Sounds good. But you and your dad have to keep this secret. I don't want anyone else knowing. Don't worry. I understand. Shino genuinely did. He knew Konoha wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Especially after his friend Torun volunteered to take his place and join Danzo's route. That's when Shino realized how dark the village could be. Talented kids didn't stay free for long. They got noticed. Even as the heir to the Aberame clan, he couldn't fight it. If not for Torun stepping forward, he would have been the one taken. Let alone someone like Natsuki, an orphan with no backing. If word got out that he was a prodigy, Root would snatch him up before anyone could blink. Which is why Natsuki's talent had to stay hidden no matter what. Chapter 9. In truth, Natsuki had no idea that Shino had been watching over him this whole time. During yesterday's outdoor training, Shino had already noticed Natsuki deliberately holding back. At first, he was puzzled. Now, he finally understood. And in his heart, he completely supported it. His friend, Aberame Shino's friend, would not be taken away. All right, I'll teach you the core principles now, Natsuki said, but I still have to cook, so you'll be training on your own for a while. He then began explaining the basics of one-handed hand seals, what to focus on, what techniques helped. Shino listened intently, absorbing every word. Once the lesson was done, Natsuki asked about his tastes, then went into the kitchen to start preparing dinner. Shino watched Natsuki's back for a moment, then returned to his practice with renewed motivation. He knew full well the value of one-handed seals, especially in a clutch situation. Just like in the original timeline when Sasuke and Haku had a standoff, and Haku launched an attack mid-stalemate with a single hand seal. Had Sasuke been any slower, he would have been seriously injured. Though the Aberame clan specialized in insect techniques, they still practiced standard ninjutsu like the 3 basic jutsu and shadow clone. One-handed seals had huge potential. Before long, Natsuki had finished cooking and called Shino to the table. The cuisine in the world of Naruto leaned toward traditional Japanese fare, with an emphasis on individual servings. Natsuki adapted to the local culture and split the dishes accordingly. Shino, likely encountering Chinese food for the first time, raised his brows in surprise. He picked up a piece of meat and popped it into his mouth and his entire expression changed. Natsuki, your cooking is amazing. This is delicious. Haha, it's just basic home-cooked food. Glad you like it. Natsuki wasn't being modest, what he made really was standard fare. It's just that Japanese food culture was a bit lacking. For someone like Shino who'd never had a different style of food, of course it tasted amazing. After finishing dinner, Shino didn't linger. He stood up and got ready to leave. Want me to walk you home? It's already dark. No need. I'm safe. See you tomorrow, Shino replied and disappeared into the night. Natsuki looked around, didn't see any sign of him, then closed the door, cleaned up the dishes, and entered the gravity training room. Time to work off that full stomach with some tree climbing and water walking. Meanwhile, Shino had just returned home, where his father, Aberame Shibi, was already waiting. Seeing his son return safely, Shibi exhaled a quiet breath of relief. Shino, why are you home so late today? I had dinner at a friend's house, Shino replied honestly. Shibi's sunglasses practically lit up. Oh? You've already made a friend? And even had dinner at their house? Not bad at all. Clearly, he was very pleased that his usually reserved son had managed to make a friend. Dad, actually, I have something to discuss with you. Shino then explained everything about Natsuki, from the dinner to the lesson and the context behind it, then waited quietly for his father's response. Shibi looked thoughtful. That friend of yours is a real genius. Not from a shinobi family, yet already developed one-handed seals on his own? That's incredible. And he seems like a good person. He'd rather sell the technique than take advantage of a friend. You're right to trust him. Here's what we'll do, offer him 100,000 RY as payment for teaching you. Shino was stunned. 100,000. Shibi ruffled his hair with a chuckle. A single B-rank mission earns between 80 to 200,000. This is perfectly fair. What, you want to offer him 1 million instead? If you're worried it's not enough, just help your friend more in the future. Shino nodded silently. Then his father stuffed a thick wad of cash into his hands, leaving him frozen in place. He had originally planned to use his own allowance. Shibi gave a warm smile. I'm glad you made a friend, Shino. It makes me happy as your father. Money's not an issue, don't worry about it. Thanks, Dad. The next day at noon, Shino brought Natsuki to a dango shop and treated him to lunch. He also handed him the envelope full of money. Natsuki let out an awkward laugh. You could have waited until after you mastered it. No rush. Shino quietly ate his dango. Doesn't matter. I'll learn it soon. Natsuki didn't refuse. He accepted the money and asked how Shino's training had gone. Not that he had to monitor Shino closely, this wasn't Naruto they were talking about. Shino was diligent and disciplined. If he had any problems, he would bring them up on his own. And with his level of talent, once he grasped the basics, learning wasn't hard. With 100,000 RY now in his hands, Natsuki no longer had to worry about starving. He could finally start planning his training more seriously. During the day, it would be class time. In his free hours, he'd review the school textbooks, especially the outdoor combat classes and practical subjects. In the mornings and evenings, he'd train in the gravity training room. For now, he'd set the gravity to 2x. He was still a kid, overdoing the weights could stunt his growth, and that would defeat the whole purpose. As for his training style, he followed the Kamizenin, turtle hermit, method, delivering milk, digging fields, mining, swimming, nothing too extreme, but comprehensive enough to work out his entire body. With proper meals and nutrients afterward, he would make solid progress during his student years. As he got older, he'd gradually increase the gravity and intensity. But that was for the future. He also kept Master Roshi's words in mind: train hard, eat well, sleep well, and study well. Eating and sleeping especially absolutely critical for a child's development. Now that he had a stable food supply, Natsuki decided that aside from the first of each month, he would never train past midnight. Every night, he'd sleep on time. After all, he had to wake up early the next day to deliver milk. This morning, under 2x gravity in the training room, Natsuki was carrying a heavy basket of milk and climbing a steep mountain path. He had no idea how far he'd walked. His legs were shaking, and his whole body was drenched in sweat. He grit his teeth and pressed on. He had intentionally set the milk route to be long and hard climbing, wading through streams, navigating all sorts of terrain. Chakra was forbidden, making it even harder. It was brutal. After what felt like forever, he finally delivered the milk to the target location. Then he grabbed a glass and chugged it down only to immediately gag and roll his eyes. As expected, food produced inside the training room had no taste. If it had, he wouldn't have to worry about groceries. Not that he was complaining, this system of his was already incredible. Asking for more would just be greedy. He finished training, took a hot shower, had a hearty breakfast, then rushed off to school. Chapter 10. Shino had arrived early. When he saw Natsuki, the reflection on his sunglasses was practically gleaming. In a low voice, he said, "Natsuki, I've already mastered it." Natsuki wasn't surprised. "It's only been a few days, and you've already learned it. As expected, you've got real talent. It's because you taught me the trick." Shino replied humbly, "It helped me a lot. I feel like my chakra control has become more refined, and my strength has improved too." "Thank you, Natsuki." Natsuki waved him off. "No need to thank me. You paid for it. Besides, the stronger you are, the safer I feel. If we end up in the same team someday, I'll definitely trust you to watch my back. Of course, I'll train hard too, so you can trust me to guard yours." Yeah, sounds kinda romantic, but don't get the wrong idea. This is a promise between comrades to protect each other. It's touching and passionate, got it?" Shino didn't say anything more, but nodded seriously. For a ninja, being able to entrust someone with their back meant being partners through life and death, the most trustworthy kind of friend. He, Abarame Shino, would not betray that trust. Today's lesson was chakra extraction and hand seals. Though many had already learned it, some students had never even been exposed to this before. Over the past few days, they had only just learned to read and picked up a bit of history. Chakra extraction and hand seals, though, were absolutely essential lessons. Irika stood seriously at the podium, afraid his students wouldn't understand. He truly worked hard to be a good teacher. But while the students who had already learned could afford to slack off a bit, those who hadn't mastered it were also goofing around, and that pushed Irika over the edge. He grabbed the chalkboard eraser and hurled it with precision, hitting a certain spiky blonde right on the head. Then came the roar, "Naruto! You think you can slack off just because you've learned hand seals? You dare say you want to be Hokage like this? Get up here and show me your seals." The blonde immediately wilted and trudged up to the front, dragging his feet through a slow, clumsy performance of the hand signs. Rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, pig. These are the 12 basic seals. They're not hard per se. The key is proficiency. Especially in battle, you can't afford to fumble the signs. One wrong move, and it could cost your life. But Naruto was a dunce. Worse yet, he didn't take learning seriously. Mistake after mistake, it was a mess. Natsuki watched Naruto's miserable attempts and couldn't help but cover his face. That kid had really been kind of dumb when he was younger. And despite constantly shouting about wanting to be Hokage, he never put in the work. It just came across as empty bragging. Without a teacher's guidance, it was no surprise he was always dead last. If Jiraiya hadn't taken him in later on, forget becoming Hokage, he'd probably be stuck as a genin forever and end up as a joke. Passion and hot-bloodedness are fine if you're the protagonist. If you're not, those lines are just empty talk. Always yelling Hokage this, Hokage that. How about you actually study first? It's fine not to know things at the start. But listen in class. Ask the teacher for help after school. Irika was fuming too. He roared, "Naruto! Don't even think about going home after class. Come to my office, I'll give you one-on-one tutoring. You're not allowed to leave until you get it right." Naruto was dumbfounded. "Hey? Irika-sensei, you can't be serious. I was gonna ask Sakura to hang out after class. You? Ask a girl out? Dream on. But. No buts. Come to my office after class. Got it. Okay, geez. Naruto ultimately gave in. He probably knew Irika was doing it for his sake. But still, he really liked Sakura. He genuinely wanted to hang out with her. But just as Naruto returned to his seat, Sakura's cold voice cut through the air, "Naruto, don't flatter yourself. I'd never agree to go out with you." Smack! Naruto's heart shattered on the spot. Of course. Sakura had always had a thing for that aloof Sasuke guy. She'd never looked at Naruto kindly. No matter how many sweet words he spoke, no matter how hard he tried to win her over, he only got scolded or even beaten up. Still, he liked her. What could he do? Natsuki watched Naruto's dejected figure walk back inside. Like Hinata, he rolled his eyes. This guy. Always shouting about becoming Hokage, but he's constantly chasing girls? Is this how you achieve your dreams? And he's only 6 years old. Isn't this way too early to be chasing romance? Also, if you're going to chase someone, at least pick a better girl. Hinata is so sweet, and she only has eyes for you. How are you this blind? Seriously, I can't bear to watch. Thankfully, Natsuki only grumbled to himself. He wasn't going to get involved in the main character's drama. After class, Naruto was dragged away by Irika. Natsuki, of course, was planning to bring Shino home to see if he really had mastered one-handed seals. Also, to treat him to a meal and strengthen their bond. Since they were building friendships, he figured he might as well invite 2 more friends too. He turned to the 2 who were about to head home. "Shikamaru, Chiji, want to come over for dinner? The veggies in my garden are at the end of the season. Planning to cook them all and plant a new batch. Shino and I probably can't finish it all. Want to join?" Hearing the word food, Chiji agreed without hesitation. "I'm in." Shikamaru scratched his head. "How troublesome. Tell me where your house is first. I'll go home and grab some deer meat. There's been a surplus lately, too much to eat at home. You guys can help out. See? He grumbles about trouble, but he still agrees and even brings meat. Who wouldn't like a friend like that?" Shino chimed in, "Natsuki, your garden doesn't have many vegetable varieties. I'll grab some from my house, let you all taste the fresh vegetables grown by the Aberame clan." Chiji munched on chips and added casually, "Then I'll go grab some snacks. You guys." Natsuki rubbed his forehead. "Do whatever you want. But you don't have to be so formal when coming over. We're friends. I just wanted to have a nice meal together." They just smiled. But there was no way they'd show up empty-handed. Natsuki let them be. After giving his address, they split up. He went straight to the market, bought some pork and pig's feet, grabbed some tomatoes and eggs, and even picked up 2 chickens. He didn't know that many home-style recipes, but since he was hosting friends today, he was giving it his all. He didn't know how to cook deer meat, so Shikamaru would have to handle that. When he got home, he immediately started cooking a big pot of rice. After all, Chiji's appetite was huge. He had to prepare plenty. And the variety of dishes couldn't be too few either. Though his family wasn't wealthy, he refused to be stingy when hosting guests. Just as Natsuki was prepping the pig's feet, Shino showed up with 2 large baskets of vegetables. Natsuki looked at him, speechless. "Shino, are you setting up a market stall or something?" Shino responded matter-of-factly, "We grow a lot of vegetables at home. Might as well bring more since we can't finish them." "Oh, right. Let me show you my one-handed seals. Tell me if there's anything wrong." This guy knows how to change the subject now. Fortunately, Natsuki didn't press him. He watched as Shino performed the Henge no Jutsu, Kawarimi no Jutsu, and Bunshin no Jutsu using one-handed seals and nodded in approval. Chapter 11. Shino, you've indeed mastered one-handed seals. Just keep practicing from now on. Oh, and make sure both your left and right hands are equally skilled. Also, try switching other jutsus to one-handed seals to get familiar with them. In battle, it'll definitely come in handy. Natsuki gave a few reminders while tossing the prepped pig's feet into a pot to stew, not forgetting to add tangerine peel, and having soybeans ready too. Actually, lotus root would have been even better, but that stuff's ridiculously expensive. Even if he bought some, it wouldn't be enough, especially with Chiji coming. Better to go with soybeans instead. Seeing this, Shino promptly helped with washing vegetables. Not long after, Shikamaru showed up carrying a huge chunk of venison, along with a grill and spices. A real lifesaver. Chiji didn't bring much in the way of snacks, but he did bring a big slab of beef. Salivating, he said, I told my parents I was eating at a friend's house, and they insisted I bring some beef. Hehe, since Shikamaru brought the grill, let's roast it all together. What a pain. I'll do the grilling then. That was just Shikamaru being Shikamaru, always grumbling, but when it came to friends, never cutting corners. Natsuki quickly offered, leave me some of the beef. I'll make a few dishes with a different flavor. Naturally, neither Shikamaru nor Chiji refused. It was Natsuki's treat, after all. Whatever he wanted to do, they were just the support crew, waiting to eat. At that moment, Natsuki was busying away alone in the kitchen, while Shino, Shikamaru, and Chiji set up for grilling outside. Shikamaru casually asked, Shino, this isn't your first time visiting Natsuki's place, right? Shino nodded, with a hint of pride in his voice. Natsuki invited me over once before. His cooking is amazing. I was the first friend to taste it. It's really that good? Then I'm gonna eat my fill today. Chichi's stomach was already growling, especially as waves of delicious smells wafted through the air, making him drool uncontrollably. Fortunately, Natsuki was efficient. In no time, he brought out dish after dish and even set out a few bottles of fruit juice. Looking at the table loaded with food, soybean stewed pig's feet, garlic shoots with cured pork, tomato scrambled eggs, spicy stir-fried chicken, spicy beef, white-cut chicken, stir-fried greens, pork veggie soup, grilled venison, grilled beef, and a massive pot of rice on the side. Shikamaru twitched at the corner of his mouth. Tea this much, can we finish it all? Chiji swore solemnly, of course we can. And it all looks so good I won't leave a single bite. Shino was also clearly tempted. The last time he'd eaten Natsuki's cooking, he couldn't forget the taste. Now the dishes were more plentiful and even more enticing in smell and appearance, surely the taste wouldn't disappoint. Natsuki scooped a bowl of rice for each of them, a big one for Chiji, and even placed a whole bowl of rice beside him just in case. He also gave everyone an empty bowl and prepared communal chopsticks and spoons. After all, the custom in this world was to eat separately, and Natsuki followed suit. Alright, don't be shy. Let's eat. As the host, Natsuki took the first bite, and the others followed eagerly. In no time, the table was silent, everyone too focused on eating, afraid to fall behind. What they thought was too much food vanished quickly, with even the pig's foot soup cleaned out by Chiji. By the time the sky darkened, all four of them were slumped in their chairs, the table a complete mess. I'm stuffed. That was too good. I want more. Chiji was clearly not done. Natsuki, your cooking's really something, Shikamaru praised sincerely. Shino didn't say a word, just nodded repeatedly like he wanted to give 10 thumbs up. Clearly satisfied. Natsuki was also pleased. Not just because he wanted to befriend these three, but because eating with friends was a lot better than sitting alone every day. Truly, humans aren't meant to be alone, friends are a must. Alright, don't just sit there all full. Let's get up and walk around, or your stomachs will hurt when you sleep. Natsuki urged them to get moving. They all took a stroll around the neighborhood and soon wandered onto the main street, where the smell of food from various stalls drifted toward them. Chiji looked tempted again but was quickly held back by the others. As they passed Ichiraku Ramen, they saw Irika-sensei eating with Naruto. Naruto was all smiles, clearly delighted to have Irika eating with him. That pair, clearly not related by blood, would one day grow even closer than father and son. This was probably the beginning of that bond. Shikamaru looked at Naruto's back and casually asked, Natsuki, what do you think of Naruto? I use my eyes to look at him. Natsuki rolled his eyes. But he could more or less guess what Shikamaru was thinking. After all, Shikamaru came from a prestigious ninja clan and was smart enough to know a lot of things. He was probably feeling conflicted about Naruto. As of now, Shikamaru and Chiji weren't friends with Naruto yet. They hadn't skipped class together or bonded. Maybe Shikamaru wasn't sure how to treat Naruto. As the heir of the Nara clan, closely tied to the Sarutobi family, the idea of befriending a Jinchuriki might be seen as controversial. He's just a hot-blooded idiot. That was Natsuki's verdict. To a kid, if you disregard the village's talk of the Nine Tails, Naruto was just that, an overly passionate, slightly dumb kid. Shikamaru didn't actually need to worry. As a child of a major clan under the Hokage's faction, if it were truly forbidden to befriend Naruto, his elders would have warned him already. Overthinking it was just falling into a trap of his own intellect. Hot-blooded idiot, hey. Shikamaru repeated the phrase, then chuckled. Yeah, that fits. Everyone says I'm smart, but Natsuki, you're not dumb either. Maybe even smarter than me. Natsuki waved it off. I don't believe in IQ scores. They say even the wisest make mistakes, and even fools can get it right once in a while. I just know I need to think things through. But you really are smart, Shikamaru. Sometimes, though, you don't need to overthink. What you need is to find the essence of things. Shikamaru's eyes widened in surprise, like he was seeing Natsuki for the first time. The essence of things? What's that? Natsuki grinned and pointed at Shikamaru. Hard to explain, but let me give you an example. You, Nara Shikamaru, on the surface, you're the heir to the Nara clan and known as a genius. But your essence is just a lazy fish with a bit of a brain. One that hates trouble, refuses to flip over, but ends up being forced to lie under the sun until it's dried out. Shikamaru slapped his forehead and laughed. That's a pretty accurate description. Maybe I really am just a dried out lazy fish. But I get it now what you mean by the essence of things. Essence wasn't about surface level labels. It was the real, raw truth. Just like Naruto, son of the fourth Hokage, Jinchuriki, Sakura's hopeless admirer, all just labels. His essence? Just a hot-blooded idiot. Chapter 12. Time flew like a fleeting horse. More than 20 days had passed. During this time, Shikamaru seemed to have come to some realizations and somehow ended up becoming friends with Naruto. Maybe it was because they got punished together for skipping class? Naturally, this led to Chichi also becoming friends with Naruto. Even though Inyazuka Kaiba didn't have Akamaru yet, he too often wandered off during class hours and, with Naruto, Shikamaru, and Chichi, formed what people started calling the skipping class 4. Even Natsuki and Shino, due to their relationship with Shikamaru and Chichi, occasionally tagged along with Naruto for river games or street wandering. Though not exactly close friends, they at least became familiar with each other. To Naruto, school life now felt blissful. He had a teacher who cared for him, friends who didn't discriminate against or hate him, and even a girl he liked. Every day was filled with laughter and fun. He was fully immersed in happiness. Natsuki maintained his usual stance. He wasn't close to Naruto, but always treated him with friendliness. And since his interactions with Naruto were purely due to Shikamaru and Chichi, surely Hiruzen or even Danzo wouldn't be dumb enough to suspect him of deliberately getting close to the Jinchuriki. But Natsuki didn't have time to worry about that. He was focused on his training plan. While he couldn't grow stronger overnight, his progress each day was significant. His physical strength had clearly improved, his chakra reserve steadily increased, and through consistent studying at school and the library, his body and mind were growing rapidly. Tonight was the first of the month, again the second activation of the special laboratory state. It was extremely important to Natsuki. He had already prepared his research project and was now double-checking every detail, hoping everything would go smoothly tonight. Suddenly, noise erupted nearby, causing Natsuki to frown. "What's going on?" he asked, clearly annoyed. "It's at the school training field," Shino said as a bug returned to his fingertip, relaying what it had seen. 7 second-year students are trying to bully Naruto. He's arguing with them now. Shikamaru, Chichi, and Kaiba already rushed over to try and break it up. "We're going to." Natsuki had a bad feeling. Not only was his train of thought interrupted, but he suspected this might turn into a fight. If it was just Naruto getting into trouble, Natsuki wouldn't bother. But with Shikamaru and Chichi involved, they were bound to get dragged in, and as their friend, he couldn't just sit back. Shino seemed to think the same and didn't object. The two of them quickly left the classroom and ran straight for the training field. By then, a crowd had gathered. Angry voices rang out, Naruto's indignant shouting and curses from others. Things like "damn fox demon" and "why don't you just die?" could be heard. Technically, the third Hokage had issued an order: no one was allowed to mention the Nine Tails around Naruto, let alone bully him. Even students were included in this directive. But these second-year kids, who knows if they were just too angry or too dumb, were brazenly shouting it in public. Bold, to say the least. Naruto was especially sensitive about being called the fox demon. He didn't know how to respond. Surrounded by the scornful, disgusted eyes of the onlookers, he felt isolated all over again. Just then, Chiji tried to step in. "Come on now, we're all classmates. No need to act like this." But the leader of the second years glared at him. "Shut up, you fat pig. Mind your own business, or I'll curse you out too. Fat pig. Did you just call me a fat pig?" That hit Chiji's bottom line. His anger exploded. He charged forward and landed a punch right on the guy's nose, drawing blood. That stirred the hornet's nest. The 7 second years flew into a rage and rushed at Chiji. Shikamaru clicked his tongue, clearly irritated. What a pain, don't these guys have better things to do? Even so, he ran toward the fray. When it came to his friends, he'd never back down. Anyone who insulted Chiji was asking for it. Kaiba, meanwhile, was thrilled. He charged in yelling, "Naruto, you coward! We're the ones helping you. These guys? Watch me knock 'em flat. You just stand there and enjoy the show." "Humph! I'm not just gonna stand here." Naruto, moved to tears by his friends jumping in to help, shouted back with reddened eyes and charged in too, determined to beat the ones who insulted him. But someone else was faster. Just as one of the bigger kids raised his hand to hit Chiji, a dark blur flashed forward and grabbed the kid's wrist. "Picking on someone smaller? I won't go easy on you." With a cold snort, Natsuki squeezed the boy's wrist, making him scream, then slapped him hard across the face, sending him staggering back. Another boy lunged at Natsuki from behind but was swiftly kicked down by Shino, who had arrived silently. Seeing his friends join the fight, Shikamaru's confidence surged and he dove into the melee. However, the 7 second year students were still older and bigger, with more strength and better brawling skills. Since Chakra wasn't allowed, Shikamaru's group quickly fell behind. Only Natsuki and Shino, thanks to their constant training, didn't flinch even when facing older opponents. In fact, they had the upper hand. Truthfully, Natsuki could have taken down all 7 alone. But he didn't. He deliberately took a few punches and kicks now and then. If he looked too capable, he might attract the attention of those lurking in the shadows. Better safe than sorry. Who knew what those rats in the dark were thinking? Caution kept the ship afloat for 1,000 years. Fortunately, the commotion was big enough to draw the attention of a teacher. "What are you doing? Fighting on school grounds? You think you're tough? I'm reporting this to the Hokage. Get ready for punishment." Irika's voice boomed across the field, and the brawl immediately halted. Even though the Hokage was just the village chief, he was also the highest authority and a role model to many students and shinobi. If he found out about this fight, not only would it ruin their image, but there was also the risk of public reprimand. It would be humiliating. Within 10 minutes, the crowd had dispersed, leaving only the two sides of the fight behind. Irika was fuming. "Speak. Why were you fighting?" Natsuki stepped up first, raising his hand. "Reporting, Sensei. Shino and I heard that second years were bullying Shikamaru and the others, so we came to help. As soon as we got there, we saw them about to hit Chiji, so we stepped in. But they were aggressive and refused to back off. We had no choice but to fight." Shino nodded firmly. "That's exactly what happened. You know me, Sensei, I'm well behaved. I don't fight." Shikamaru chimed in. "You know me, Sensei. I'm lazy and skip class sometimes, sure, but I've never argued or fought with classmates. They picked the fight. We just defended ourselves." Chiji added, "Sensei, you know I only like eating. I don't like fighting." Chapter 13. The 7 second year students turned red with rage upon hearing that. "Seriously? Each one of you just dumped the blame so cleanly like you're saints? Don't act like you're totally innocent. Sure, we started it by calling him a fox demon, but it was that damn fatso who threw the first punch." Irika's sharp gaze fell on the 7 second years, making them shrink back instinctively. Kids were naturally scared of their teachers, especially ones who had the power to report them to the Hokage. There was no room for disobedience. Finally, the ringleader timidly spoke up, "Irika-sensei, we actually lost a sparring match to Higaniji earlier and were still pissed about it. Then we saw the fox cough, that blonde brat walk by, and we just felt annoyed and yelled at him. Then that fat pea cough, the student eating chips tried to step in and calm things down. We got mad and cursed him too. We didn't expect him to punch us right away. So they started it. Irika stared at the boy for a good while, confirming that he was telling the truth or at least part of it, and finally understood the situation. He rubbed his temples in frustration. A student brawl wasn't a big deal in itself. Usually, a stern lecture and punishment would take care of it. But Irika wanted to be a good teacher, someone who guided these kids down the right path. Especially since this involved Naruto, it wasn't that simple. He spoke seriously, "I'll report this to the Hokage. What happens next will be up to him. But before that, let me ask, do you all realize what you did wrong?" The 7 second years nodded quickly. "Yes, sensei, we were wrong." Natsuki, however, met Irika's eyes directly, his voice unwavering. "Sensei, it's wrong to fight in school, but I won't admit fault. Shikamaru and Chiji are my friends, and they'll be my comrades after we graduate. If they're being bullied, I won't just stand by." Shino had his hands in his pockets. "Same." Shikamaru scratched his head. "Tch, such a drag. Irika-sensei, forget right or wrong for now. You go report to the Hokage." Chiji, Kaiba, and Naruto all had that same not gonna apologize look. Especially Chiji, he'd been called a fat pig, and in his mind, punching the guy was more than justified. He'd done nothing wrong. Irika's headache only got worse. In the end, he punished all of them with handstands while he hurried off to the Hokage's office. Inside the Hokage's office, Hiruzen was using his crystal ball to monitor the situation at the school's training field. He casually pulled out the student roster from his drawer. He already knew Shikamaru, Chiji, Kaiba, and Shino well, they were all from major clans. But this kid, Natsuki, was someone he was seeing for the first time. Reading through Natsuki's file, Hiruzen didn't see anything unusual. Just an ordinary orphan, with some talent in ninja tools, but otherwise average across the board. However, the fact that Natsuki could make friends with so many kids from major clans, and now stood up like that, he was either intentionally trying to win favor, or he genuinely had a strong sense of loyalty. Hard to tell. He'd have to ask Irika. Of course, the boy was only 6 years old, there wasn't much need to overthink it. At that moment, Irika arrived and quickly reported everything. "Hokage-sama, that's the situation. What do you think we should do about the fight? If possible, I hope we can deal with it seriously so they'll realize what they did wrong." Your intentions are good, Irika, but we shouldn't be too hasty in assigning blame." Hiruzen spoke slowly and calmly, clearly in no rush. "Irika, what do you think of these children? For example, this one called Natsuki, he seems to have a strong sense of camaraderie. If he becomes a ninja one day, I imagine he'll treasure his comrades too." Irika immediately recalled his impressions. "Now that you mention it, Natsuki is actually quite well behaved. He pays close attention in class, actively studies after school, and often goes to the library. During outdoor lessons, he's very engaged and has shown talent in kunao and shuriken throwing. Him fighting today and refusing to apologize was really unexpected." Hiruzen nodded thoughtfully. So far, nothing seemed suspicious about the boy. Throwing skills weren't anything special. An Uchiha with Sharingan could easily surpass that. So he didn't seem like a prodigy worth special attention. His ability to make friends with so many kids from important clans probably stemmed from his personality. After some thought, Hiruzen still felt they needed to be punished. If not, it might set a bad precedent for other students. He made his decision. "Irika, go back and have them run 10 kilometers, and copy the Will of Fire 10 times. They must turn it in within 5 days. If their handwriting is messy, they'll redo it." "Yes, Hokage-sama." Irika accepted the order and rushed back in a hurry. Not long after, the office door slammed open. A middle-aged man with his right eye wrapped in bandages and his right arm in a sling stormed in, full of fury. "Hiruzen. You've heard, haven't you? The Jinchuriki went berserk and got into a fight. Listen to me, hand him over so I can train him. If he loses control, it'll be too late. Give him to me, and I promise I'll turn him into a top-tier war machine." "Danzo, that's enough." Hiruzen's expression turned stern. "Naruto didn't go berserk. He's not out of control." Danzo ignored him and pressed on. "Hiruzen, you're still too soft. No Jinchuriki ever stays sane. You can't control him. If the Nine Tails goes wild again, you'll bear the blame. Shut up, Danzo. I'm the Hokage. You. Hiruzen, you'll regret this. Slam. Danzo stormed out, furious. Natsuki, unaware of the drama playing out in the Hokage's office, was pretending to grit his teeth and do a handstand while secretly observing the 7-second years. So they lost a sparring match against Hyuga Neji, got pissed, and happened to see Naruto. That's why they took it out on him. So basically, Naruto got dragged in because of his future brother-in-law. Hyuga Neji, hey? Wonder how strong he is right now. Could I beat him? Among the Konoha 12, only Guy's team was a year older and ironically, they had the worst fate. Neji died, Tenten stayed single forever, and Rock Lee probably plateaued after his injury during the Chunin exams. Meanwhile, Naruto's generation? Every single one of them turned out pretty well. Life really is unfair. Just then, Naruto spoke up. Chichi, Shikamaru, Kaiba, Natsuki, thank you for stepping in to help me. Natsuki rolled his eyes. I was helping Shikamaru and Chichi. Also, you forgot Shino. Naruto blinked, then noticed Shino standing off to the side muttering to himself, and looked awkward. That wasn't his fault. Shino's presence was so low, he just hadn't noticed him. Naruto quickly apologized, sorry, Shino. Thanks to you too. Shino muttered, as expected. Naruto didn't even notice me. And I helped quite a bit. Naruto didn't know how to respond, but he still looked happy. Even if Natsuki and Shino had come for Shikamaru and Chichi, they'd still helped him. That was enough. Chapter 14. After Iruka returned, he announced the punishment decided by the Hokage. Running 10 kilometers? That was nothing. But copying the will of fire 10 times? That was just cruel. The book may be thin, but it had a lot of words. Copying it 10 times would practically break their wrists and worse, it was basically a form of indoctrination. That old man Sarutobi was ruthless. Oh well. Might as well accept the punishment obediently. Natsuki flipped upright from his handstand and began to run. The others followed one after another. By the time school ended, the 10 kilometers were finally done. Everyone was panting heavily. Natsuki had to pretend to be tired too, forcing out quite a bit of sweat. After all, a 6-year-old running 10 kilometers without sweating or gasping for breath. That would look too suspicious. At that moment, Natsuki caught sight of a short-haired, white-eyed little figure peeking from a corner. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Who else could it be but Hinata, the ultimate peeking maniac? Back when he watched the anime, he already thought this girl was way too shy. Seeing it in person was even more exasperating. She couldn't even talk properly, let alone get close to Naruto. Natsuki looked at the goofy Naruto, then at the girl hiding behind a post, and his mouth twitched. You too. Want me to give you a hand? Oi! Hinata! Come over here for a sec. Natsuki waved at her. Hinata jumped, shrinking back reflexively. But after a moment, she poked her head out again. Under everyone's curious gaze, her face flushed red, but she still walked over slowly. Coming from the Hyuga clan, strict upbringing dictated that if someone called her by name especially publicly she had to respond. Naruto looked confused. Hinata? Why were you hiding in the corner? Hinata fidgeted with her fingers and mumbled, and Naruto-kun, I just... Natsuki cut in, Hinata, this guy's trash at hand to hand. Got beat up pretty bad and he's injured. Do you have any medicine? Give him a bit. What? Naruto-kun got badly hurt. I have ointment. Hinata immediately panicked, pulling out a container of ointment. She wanted to apply it for him but was too shy to get close. Naruto, annoyed, said, Hey! What are you talking about, Natsuki? Who's trash at hand to hand? I was just holding back. If I went all out, those guys would be flying. There he goes again, talking big. Inyazuka Kaiba, flying, hey? You mean us? Everyone was speechless, but none of them said anything. They were too busy watching Hinata. Shikamaru and Shino, the two smart ones, seemed to catch on. When they saw Natsuki looking all smug and relaxed, and Hinata blushing like crazy while Naruto acted completely oblivious, they suddenly had a flash of insight. Ah! So that's what's going on. No wonder the little Hyuga girl had been hiding and peeking around. Naruto, of course, noticed nothing. When he saw Hinata blushing, he reached out and touched her forehead. "Hey, you okay? Are you sick or something?" Hinata's face turned scarlet and she fainted on the spot. "Hinata! What happened?" Naruto panicked, catching her in his arms. Hinata fainted blissfully in his embrace. Natsuki couldn't stop grinning. He didn't have strong feelings either way about the Naruto x Hinata ship, and he had zero intention of destroying Boruto at the source. Hinata had fallen hard for Naruto a long time ago. There was no place for anyone else to step in. Natsuki had awakened his past life memories far too late. He missed the window completely. Besides, even if he had the chance, Natsuki wouldn't interfere. Not because Hinata wasn't a good girl, far from it. But the Hyuga clan's rules were a pain. Marry Hinata, and your child might end up with the cursed seal of the caged bird? No thanks. Just that alone was enough to make Natsuki pass. Better not to start anything in the first place. It's not like there aren't other great girls in the ninja world. And it's not like he had to get married anyway. So he'd rather just quietly watch the ship sail from nearby and maybe give it a little push now and then. With Hinata now Naruto's responsibility, the others dispersed. They still had to go home and copy the Will of Fire, after all. Natsuki returned home at top speed, had dinner and digested a bit, and exactly at 7 o'clock, entered the special laboratory space to begin his research. Project 1, could Henge no Jutsu transform him into thin paper to replicate the Kami-e, paper drawing, technique from Rokushiki? Project 2, combat applications of Bunshin no Jutsu. Project 3, chakra shape transformation and chakra threads. Project 4, chakra nature transformation, and infusing water nature chakra into the Rei's Nan. There were quite a few projects, but the first 3 wouldn't take too much time. The real challenge was the 4th, combining chakra shape and nature transformation. Naruto took a long time to develop Fiton, Rasen Shuriken, and even though Natsuki believed his talent exceeded Naruto's, doing this alone with no teacher's guidance would be incredibly difficult. Most crucially, he had never seen chakra nature transformation. If he even knew a single Suten Jutsu, even just a D rank, he could at least observe how chakra turned into water. But right now, he was completely in the dark, and could only approach the research with a try-and-see attitude. If it really didn't work out, he'd just make another deal with Shino. Surely Shino could get his hands on a D rank scroll. No point just thinking. Let's get to it. First up, the first project. Natsuki visualized the form of thin paper in his mind and quickly performed the seals. With a poof, he did transform into a piece of paper, but it was as thick as a notebook. That just showed how poorly he had mastered the transformation jutsu. He couldn't freely control the form. And he didn't just want to become any paper. What he wanted was a paper-thin form, like a 2D cutout that swayed in the wind light enough that a punch wouldn't land, the air alone would push it aside. That was the essence of Kami-e from One Piece's Rokushiki, a superb dodging technique, well worth researching. After all, Natsuki didn't have that many techniques to study at the moment. He pushed on, refining his image and transforming over and over. After half an hour, he finally succeeded in turning into a paper-thin version of himself. Then, using thought-controlled wooden puppets to attack, he found that no matter how heavy the blows were, his transformed body could easily dodge or be blown away completely unharmed. Woo! Henge no Jutsu, Kami-e, completed. He returned to his normal form, extremely satisfied with the first project's success. But before he could celebrate, one of the wooden puppets smacked him on the head, making him wince. He'd forgotten to dismiss them. He quickly dispelled the puppets and rubbed his aching head. It didn't cause damage, but it still hurt. No time to waste. On to the second project. Combat development of Bunshin no Jutsu. This wasn't too hard, but definitely worth experimenting with. Bunshin no Jutsu created one or more chakra-based illusions with no substance or attack power. Its main purpose was to confuse opponents. Sounded great in theory, but the drawback was huge. Once the enemy realized which one was real, the technique became useless and was just a chakra drain. That's why it only appeared in the early stages of the original series, like the graduation exam, or in the Chunin exams during Sakura vs Ino. It was ultimately treated like a useless textbook technique. Chapter 15. But just a small change in how the technique was used could give Bunshin no Jutsu some real combat value. For instance, what if the clone and the real body moved as one during close combat? Normally, once the opponent figures out which is the clone, they can just ignore the illusions. But if the clone overlaps perfectly with the real body, it becomes impossible to disregard. Let's say I throw a punch, how would the opponent know if it's a real hit or just a clone's illusion? If they don't block or dodge and it turns out to be real, they get hit. But if they do dodge or block and it turns out to be a fake, they've wasted time and opened themselves up. It's not a particularly sophisticated move, but it could be quite effective early on, especially against rookies. Natsuki even gave it a name, Bunshin Gatai no Jutsu Clone Integration Technique. He summoned a few wooden puppets again, formed hand seals, and layered a clone perfectly on top of himself. Then he began sparring with the puppets. Naturally, he got distracted and once again got smacked in the head by a puppet. TCH. Damn it, get outta here, get outta here. Natsuki scowled. Ugh, I really must be losing it. Puppets can't react to illusions. I need an actual person to test this on. He realized he'd gotten too absorbed in his research again. 2 whacks to the head from his own puppets in one night. Still, this second project was more or less complete. He could test it later on a real opponent, maybe even during the next combat training class. It shouldn't raise too many eyebrows. Next up was the third project, chakra shape transformation and chakra threads. Natsuki's expression grew serious. He had already trained himself to create a raise nan, meaning he had already mastered chakra shape transformation once. But this time, it was a bit different. What he wanted now was to create chakra threads. Chakra threads were mainly used for puppet control and they were actually quite practical. But if he could combine chakra nature transformation with them, they could become truly deadly. For example, if infused with wind-natured chakra, could the threads gain razor-sharp cutting power? If infused with water, especially sticky water, could they act like webs with high adhesion? What if he infused them with lightning? Or fire? There was a lot to explore. But for now, since he hadn't mastered chakra nature transformation yet, he could only focus on creating the threads, making them as thin and durable as possible. He started by concentrating chakra into his palm, then began to stretch it out like noodle dough. Soon it elongated into a chakra strand, but one wrong move, and snap, it broke apart. All that effort wasted. But Natsuki wasn't discouraged. He tried again and again like playing with dough. Thanks to his refined chakra control, once he focused completely, he managed to pull the chakra thinner and thinner. Half an hour later, he finally created a strand of chakra as fine as a strand of hair. That was very thin. Any thinner would probably be meaningless. However, when he gave it a light tug, it snapped immediately. So yeah, thin, but not durable. He needed to keep improving. 2 hours later, Natsuki raised his left hand and flicked his fingers. 5 chakra threads shot out from his fingertips and neatly wrapped around one of the wooden puppets. With a small tug, he yanked the puppet over without the threads snapping. Finally, durability secured. Creating the threads wasn't too difficult. The hard part would be using them effectively. Wrapping things up was just a basic technique. Controlling a puppet? That was the real deal. But puppet mastery wasn't easy. It required precise technique. Tsunagakura was the expert in this field. If Natsuki wanted to develop puppet skills himself, it'd take a lot of time. Luckily, Natsuki didn't care much for puppet jutsu. Puppets were flashy in the early arcs, but in the later stages, they barely saw use. Too much work for too little payoff. Instead, he preferred the idea of infusing chakra threads with elemental properties, giving them qualities like cutting, adhesion, etc. If he could pull that off, they'd be way more useful in real combat. With that, the third project was done. And he still had over 6 hours left. Now came the final project, chakra nature transformation and water nature chakra and raise nan fusion. Natsuki stared blankly into space. He had no clue where to start. He didn't have any actual knowledge in this area. No one was teaching him either. He couldn't just wish it into existence. Screw it. Let's at least try. He summoned a sheet of paper in his palm and began to visualize soaking it with water nature chakra. He was copying Naruto's original method. Naruto had wind nature chakra and trained by imagining cutting a leaf in half, focusing on the sharp, slicing nature of wind. Natsuki had water, earth, and lightning. He decided to start with water, and focused on its wet and flowing properties. If he could soak the paper using chakra, that would count as success. The next moment, he felt a cool sensation in his palm. The paper became damp, completely soaked. But instead of being excited, Natsuki just looked weirded out. He summoned another sheet of paper. Again, he imagined it soaking up water. FSSH, it got wet immediately. Natsuki's mouth twitched. Yeah, no. This isn't success. It's just this lab screwing me over. Everything in this lab bent to his will. If he thought of paper, it would appear. If he willed it to be wet, it would be wet. The lab's unique environment was interfering with his research. Just great. He sighed. Chakra nature transformation, it'd have to be done outside the lab. Preferably in the gravity training room or somewhere real. For now, there was nothing more he could research. It felt like such a waste of time. Research needs a foundation. Aside from chakra and the 3 basic techniques, I've got nothing. Even with all the knowledge I've gathered from books and lectures, it's still not enough. I need more. Like, ninjutsu. If only I'd learned a water release jutsu earlier, I wouldn't be fumbling around in the dark like this. Looks like, he'd have to talk to Shino again. But what could he trade this time? Natsuki mulled over it for a long while, then sighed. Still no idea. But he couldn't let the rest of his lab time go to waste. So he moved on to something else. He summoned a shuriken using thought, and started brainstorming ninja tool concepts. What if this shuriken wasn't just a normal shuriken? Say it's made from brittle material filled with knockout gas or poison. Coated black to look like the real deal. The moment an enemy blocks it, boom. The whole thing shatters, poison in their face. Even if they dodge, I could tag it with an explosive seal. Totally unavoidable. Or, maybe it's a hollow core shuriken with steel wire packed inside. The moment it hits the ground, a mechanism fires, launching the wires and wrapping around the enemy's clothes or skin. Instant immobilization. Not bad. These ideas could be really useful in early stage fights against rookies. Problem is, I don't have the cash to custom make stuff like this. And besides, these kinds of weapons require excellent throwing skills. Thinking is fine and all, but in this lab, it doesn't mean anything unless I can actually make them work. I'd need someone in real life to help build this kind of stuff. Chapter 16. Natsuki thought for a moment, immediately ruling out Shino, Shikamaru, Chiji, and the others. They weren't suited for this kind of task. Sasuke? Sure, his throwing technique was top tier. But that guy was standoffish and arrogant. He probably wouldn't even bother replying to Natsuki. And with the growing friction between the Uchiha and the village, it was better not to get involved with Sasuke for now. Tenten, maybe I should find Tenten. Natsuki suddenly thought of that girl with the floral Chinese-style buns, and for a second, he got a little lost in thought. Tenten was honestly one of the most underused members of the Konoha 12. She had such a cute design, but little spotlight in terms of combat. All she ever did was throw weapons, maybe with an explosive tag or two. Her one shining moment was when she picked up the Bashsen, one of the Sage of Six Paths tools, and blew a hole through Kakuzu's heart. Later, even though she acquired the Kahaku no J and the Beni Hisago, she never really got to use them. Still, Natsuki thought of her now because, well, her family probably owned a ninja tool shop. That meant they likely had money. If anyone could help custom make special shuriken, it'd be her. Maybe he could even sell his design to her, solving both the production and funding problem at once. Plus, after graduation, Tenten would be trained under Mato Guy. Thinking of that eccentric green-clad jonin, that man who almost ended the series with one kick, Natsuki couldn't help but feel fired up. He'd already thought about seeking out Guy to learn the Hachiman Tonk, 8 Gates released formation. In fact, when planning out his path to power, Natsuki had already set his sights on 3 major techniques: 8 Gates, the Hotaki Sword Style, and Flying Thunder God. The Hotaki Sword Style and Flying Thunder God were harder to get, but 8 Gates seemed more feasible, especially if he could get close to Guy. With the support of his gravity training room and the special lab, he believed he could master it in no time. Especially with the lab's safety net, even opening the 8th gate wouldn't kill him during training. But Guy might be simple, he wasn't stupid. You couldn't just shout youth a few times and get into his good graces. Just look at Lee. Guy took a long time to observe him because Lee's situation mirrored his own, and only after Lee proved his dedication did Guy accept him. So don't assume Guy's easy to win over. Also, Natsuki had absolutely no desire to wear that green bodysuit and look like a kappa. Since that route wasn't happening, he decided on a detour: Guy's students. Lee probably wouldn't share 8 Gates easily. Niji? Not the friendly type. That left Tenten definitely the easiest to approach. So, his plan was, go to Tenten under the pretense of needing specialized shuriken, build rapport, get close to Guy, then eventually meet Kakashi. If he got in good with those two, they might teach him both 8 gates and the Hotaki sword style. As for Flying Thunder God, he'd wait until after Hiruzen died. The plan sounds good, but reality's never that easy. And now's not the time to be thinking about that anyway. Natsuki slapped his cheeks, clearing his head of all the scattered thoughts. He redirected his focus and drafted 2 new research projects. Deepening chakra shape transformation. Studying the Shunshin no Jutsu. Chakra shape transformation could take many forms. Rei's Nan and chakra threads were only the beginning. The more shapes he mastered now, the more versatile his techniques would be later. He wanted to experiment with a spinning top shape that could be fused with earth release, great for high-impact drills. Or a spinning disc, like Krillin's Destructo disc in Dragon Ball, which could be fused with water chakra to create a water disc slash. Basically, this was like playing with chakra dough. By shaping more forms now, he'd be laying groundwork for combining them with elemental transformations later. As for Shunshin no Jutsu, it was all about using chakra to increase movement speed to the point of seeming like teleportation. Similar to Sora from One Piece's Rokushiki or Shunpo from Bleach. Even without guidance, this was far simpler than chakra nature transformation. He was bound to gain something useful. After a full night of research, Natsuki arrived at school with dark circles under his eyes and collapsed into his seat to catch up on sleep. When Shino arrived and saw his friend like that, he couldn't help but recall the scene from last month. Funny, last time was also on the 2nd. Was this some kind of habit? He gently nudged Natsuki. Natsuki, did you stay up training again last night? Didn't Irika-sensei warn you not to stay up so late? Natsuki didn't even lift his head. I'll tell you later. Let me sleep for now. Wake me when the teacher arrives. Luckily, the first period was self-study. Why? Because Naruto, in protest of being made to copy the Will of Fire, had gone and vandalized the Hokage rock with paint. Irika had been so furious, he'd dragged Naruto to the Hokage's office to apologize. By the time Irika brought Naruto back, Natsuki had caught up on enough sleep to be functional. Still tired, but manageable. Natsuki, did you really train all night? Shino asked again. Yeah. I had a couple ideas, couldn't help myself. Got carried away and forgot to sleep. What can I say? Getting stronger is addictive. He sounded both proud and tired. Whether Shino believed him or not, Natsuki didn't care. With Irika now going over chakra extraction and hand seals again, Natsuki didn't bother listening. He just pulled out his notebook and began copying the Will of Fire. The Will of Fire may be a thin book, but come on. That one quote where the leaves dance, so too does the fire burn could have summed it up. But Hiruzen somehow managed to turn that one idea into an entire book, repeating it in every way imaginable. Pure brainwashing material. Natsuki found it painful to copy, but didn't dare slack off. If the handwriting was too sloppy, he'd have to start over. Seeing this, Shino also began copying. Actually, everyone Shikamaru, Chiji, Kaiba was quietly copying too. Only Naruto was slacking off again. Not only was he blowing off the punishment, he wasn't even paying attention in class. Had he forgotten that this whole punishment was his fault? All of this started with you, you little yellow-haired menace. Still, thanks to their practiced hand seal training, everyone's writing speed was fast. By the end of the class, Natsuki had already copied it 4 times. At this rate, they'd finish by the end of the day. Next up, outdoor training. Irika took the class out for warm-up laps, then shuriken throwing practice, and finally, paired sparring. These were all hand-to-hand combat drills. Most students didn't know any ninjutsu yet, and throwing tools could be dangerous, so taijutsu matches were the safest option. Of course, the 3 basic techniques were still allowed. Combining the 3 basic techniques with taijutsu was the bread and butter of ninja combat. Chapter 17. The first match, Sasuke vs. Natsuki. Irika called out from the match sheet. Oh ho, time to fight the emo duckling? Natsuki instinctively looked at the cool and smug Sasuke, only to see Sasuke looking right back at him, his face full of arrogance, clearly thinking the win was in the bag. The rain had stopped, the sky was clear, and the emo duckling thought he was unstoppable again. Perfect. Since he's feeling cocky, this match will be easier. At that moment, Naruto started yelling, "Iruka-sensei! Let me go, let me go! I want to challenge Sasuke and beat his ass Datebao!" Veins popped on Iruka's forehead. "Naruto, we're still not done talking about the mess you caused this morning." Naruto shrank his neck and dared not shout again, but deep down, he was seriously annoyed by how girls flocked around Sasuke and wanted nothing more than to punch that smug, pretty face. He didn't get the chance this time, but Natsuki did. So he raised his fist at Natsuki. "Natsuki! Beat the crap out of that annoying Sasuke, Datebao!" But Naruto forgot about Sasuke's cheer squad. "Kaie! Sasuke-kun is so cool! Sasuke-kun, Ganbut! Shut up, Naruto! Sasuke-kun is the best! No one can beat him!" "Exactly! That Natsuki guy will totally get wrecked by Sasuke-kun!" Natsuki's mouth twitched. He hadn't even said anything, and yet Naruto's hate got redirected to him? These love-crazed fans were getting out of hand. At Iruka's signal, Natsuki and Sasuke walked to the center and exchanged the seal of confrontation. "Begin." Iruka had just called it when Sasuke charged in, probably wanting to end this easy match as quickly as possible. But he clearly underestimated Natsuki. Though Natsuki intended to keep a low profile, he wasn't going to act like a complete amateur either. He sure as hell wasn't about to get beat up for free. He used the basic taijutsu moves they were taught at school and exchanged a few blows with Sasuke, keeping his strength roughly at Sasuke's level. For a moment, the two were neck and neck. Naruto was thrilled and cheered loudly, "Go Natsuki! Hit him! Hit him!" But the girls' cheering was way louder. They shrieked and screamed, completely drowning Naruto out. Sasuke was clearly annoyed but also surprised by Natsuki's skill. Although they hadn't had many sparring matches since school started a month ago, very few people could last more than a few rounds with him. The rest of the class just kinda sucked at taijutsu, so it wasn't surprising he usually crushed them. This was his first time fighting this Natsuki guy, and he hadn't expected him to be decent. Still, basic taijutsu was nothing. Against the Uchiha style, he would definitely lose. So Sasuke swiftly switched to the Uchiha style taijutsu he'd learned from his beloved big brother and immediately took the upper hand. Natsuki kept dodging and blocking while watching the Uchiha style closely. He realized it was indeed more advanced than the standard academy moves. It wasn't just elegant like a dance, but its power execution was unique too. If only Madara were here to say, "Do you also wish to dance?" That would have been the perfect vibe. Seeing that he couldn't win in a straight-up fight, Natsuki didn't increase his power. Instead, he suddenly stepped back a few paces and quickly formed hand seals. Bunshin no Jutsu. Poof! But everyone blinked in confusion. Natsuki had clearly used the correct hand signs and called out the right technique, yet not a single clone appeared. Did it fail? Even Iruka was puzzled. From what he remembered, Natsuki wasn't great at ninjutsu, but he could do the clone technique. And there had been no mistake in the hand seals just now. It shouldn't have failed. Naruto got anxious. "Natsuki! What are you doing? It's just the clone technique, how could you mess it up?" Even his friends were shocked. Shino, who knew Natsuki was holding back, was confused too. No matter how much you hide your strength, pretending not to know clone technique was a bit too much, right? "Ha, looks like you're so nervous you can't even pull off clone technique. Why don't you just admit defeat?" Sasuke got even cockier. But Natsuki didn't listen. He dashed forward and aimed a punch right at Sasuke's smug little face. Sasuke reached up to block, but his expression suddenly changed. The punch passed right through his block. A clone? When did it appear? The next second, a fist slammed into Sasuke's stomach and launched him into the air. He tumbled across the ground before quickly rolling back to his feet, clutching his stomach and glaring at Natsuki in shock. Natsuki now had 4 arms visible. 4 arms? What the hell? That punch just now, it was a feint? The entire class was stunned, and the girls' cheerleading was abruptly cut off. One by one, they stared in disbelief. Sasuke, the unbeatable Sasuke, had just gotten knocked back. Naruto was the first to react. "I don't know what just happened, but that was awesome, Natsuki, Datebao. Ha ha ha. Take that, stupid Sasuke. Even you get knocked flying sometimes, Datebao." The girls glared daggers at Naruto, but they had nothing to say. Many looked toward Iruka for an explanation, Irika, being a Chunin, figured it out quickly. It was clone technique. Natsuki's clone technique didn't fail, it worked. The clone and the real body were merged, so it wasn't visible to the eye. Clone technique? Really? Still kinda confusing. Natsuki was smart. Usually, clones are used as decoys to distract the opponent, but they have no offensive power. If the opponent sees through them, they can ignore them. But Natsuki merged his clone and real body, using the overlapping visuals to confuse the enemy. That way, it's hard to tell which attack is real and which isn't. With Irika's explanation, the class finally understood. Everyone was impressed. They never imagined clone technique could be used like that. Even Sasuke had been caught off guard. Shino gave a small nod. He knew Natsuki wasn't hiding everything. He had to show some skill eventually, and this creative take on clone technique was definitely eye-opening. Still, it probably wouldn't matter to those lurking in the shadows. This little trick wasn't flashy enough to get their attention. Sasuke recovered, and the pain in his stomach lessened. He actually got serious for once. Natsuki, was it? I admit I underestimated you. That was a good move. But if you think that's enough to beat me, you're dreaming. Then come break the move, Sasuke. Natsuki charged again. His clone and real fists struck in tandem, forcing Sasuke to fall back repeatedly. Though Sasuke talked big, it was obvious he couldn't easily tell which hits were real and which were fake. Sometimes he blocked the clone, which opened him up to the real attack, and sometimes he didn't block at all and took the full hit. He got punched a lot. But Sasuke was clever. He suddenly stepped back, formed a quick string of hand seals. Bunshin no Jutsu. Poof! No visible clones appeared. Instead, he now had 4 arms. He had copied Natsuki's technique in that short amount of time and hid 2 clones inside his own body. Chapter 18. Not only did he apply it brilliantly, he even surpassed the original. What else could one say? That was the emo duckling for you. As expected of an Uchiha, his comprehension really was top tier. People often underestimated the clone technique, assuming that merging clones with the original body was just as simple. In truth, controlling a phantom clone wasn't easy at all. Not only did one have to maintain the clone without letting it disperse, but also keep it perfectly aligned with the real body, otherwise, it would fail to confuse the opponent. Even merging a single clone was difficult. But Sasuke? He merged 2 clones. That was on another level. Truly gifted. Just think back to right before the Chunin exams, Sasuke nearly got wrecked by Lee's front lotus. But after seeing it just once, he managed to learn a move that had taken Lee forever to master. No wonder everyone called Sasuke a genius. The title was well deserved. That said, compared to Itachi, Sasuke was more of a standard genius. Itachi, well, he was off the charts. Kaie. Sasuke-kun is amazing. He instantly learned that move. Sasuke-kun is such a genius. Now that Sasuke-kun has 2 clones and Natsuki only has 1, he's sure to win. Calm down, will you? The number of clones has nothing to do with winning or losing. You love-crazed fangirls need to shut up already. Naruto, on the other hand, immediately shouted, Sasuke, you shameless bastard. You totally copied Natsuki's move and had the nerve to use it out in the open, date Bayo. Don't you feel embarrassed? Sasuke flushed red and snapped, shut it, you dead last. Nani? You're the dead last. Naruto was about to yell more, but Irika picked him up by the collar and tossed him aside. Under Irika's glare, Naruto finally quieted down. Natsuki remained calm, smiling as he said, as expected of the Uchiha. A move I had to work hard to come up with, you picked it up instantly. I can only manage 1 clone, and you went and controlled 2. That's seriously impressive. Sasuke smirked. Then it's time to finish this fight. With that, he lunged forward. Natsuki didn't back down and charged in as well. The 2 clashed once more. This time it was even fiercer. To the onlookers, it looked like a storm of arms flailing between them. No one could tell which were phantom clones or which fist belonged to the real body. They traded dozens of blows. Sasuke got hit more than a few times, and Natsuki took a few hits too. Once he judged it was enough, Natsuki suddenly pulled back. Poof! The clone on his body vanished, and he staggered back, panting heavily and drenched in sweat. I give up. I'm out of chakra. Natsuki admitted defeat without hesitation, making Sasuke, who was just about to charge again, stumble forward and nearly face-plant. Iruka quickly declared, "Match over. Sasuke wins." But Sasuke didn't look the least bit happy. Not only had he failed to knock Natsuki out, he'd actually taken more hits than Natsuki did. If anything, he got the worse end of the deal. Still, the opponent surrendered, and Iruka declared it over. What could he do? How could you just give up? I didn't even beat you down yet. Sasuke growled as he formed the seal of reconciliation. Can't be helped. I ran out of chakra, Natsuki replied, forming the seal too, grinning all the while. After all, getting in a few good punches on the cocky duckling had been very satisfying. Sasuke always acted so smug, someone needed to bring him down a notch before his ego hit the stratosphere. The fangirls all cheered Sasuke's victory, completely ignoring the fact that his face was dark as thunder. Iruka glanced down at his clipboard again. Next match, Naruto Uzumaki vs. Shino Abarame. Natsuki had just returned to the sidelines. Hearing that, he gave Shino a thumbs up. Good luck. Shino gave a slight nod and walked calmly to the center. Naruto bounced into place like a firecracker. Heh heh. I didn't get to fight that smug Sasuke, but Shino, prepare yourself. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage. Let me show you how awesome I am, Date Bayo. And he charged forward. The next second, KO. I've seen your awesome, Shino said coolly as he turned and walked away, leaving Naruto face down on the ground, drawing laughter from the entire class. Not that they meant to be rude, Naruto had hyped himself up big time, and then that happened. He kind of brought it on himself. Nice one. Natsuki gave a thumbs up. You too, Shino replied, his sunglasses trained on Natsuki. Your take on clone technique was impressive. Most people would have trouble beating you. Without my insects, I probably wouldn't win either. You didn't happen to stay up late last night developing that, did you? Natsuki grinned and shook his head. Nah, just a simple clone technique doesn't need an all-nighter. I'm working on something even better, but that's still a secret. Shino didn't press. As long as he knew Natsuki was strong, that was enough for him. The rest of the matches were nothing special, just weaklings flailing at each other. The girl fights were worse, face scratching and hair pulling galore. People watching couldn't stop rolling their eyes. Oh, except Hinata. She stood out quite a bit. The Hyga's gentle fist was no joke. Even though Hinata hadn't fully mastered it, it was more than enough to handle the other girls. I wonder what Naruto-kun thought of my match. Hinata mumbled to herself as she shyly looked around for her crush, only to see him fawning all over that pink-haired girl. Her heart shattered into pieces right then and there. Natsuki saw everything, and sighed at the fact he didn't have popcorn on hand. In the following days, after finishing the Will of Fire copy assignment, Natsuki finally got some breathing room. He could now go back to the plans he'd been working on in the secret lab. First priority, draft the blueprints for a special type of shuriken. It would be best to design a few more unique ninja tools as well, and then go find Tenten. Of course, he'd also look for Might Guy when he had free time. Maybe he could befriend him directly, though that path was uncertain. The Tenten route definitely had a higher success rate. Still, best to pursue both. After all, he wasn't letting the 8 gates technique slip through his fingers. Whether or not he could reach cage level or even 6 paths level might all depend on the 8 gates. The gravity training room primarily enhanced physical strength, which raised the upper limit of 8 gates usage. With a tough enough body, he might be able to open just 6 gates and still kick Madara's 6 paths form into oblivion. Compared to that, even the Hotaki swordsmanship and Hiraishin had their limits. The 8 gates might actually be better overall. Enough thinking. Time to act. With some time to spare, Natsuki quickly jotted down designs for 2 special shuriken and brainstormed other types of ninja tools like short guns and long guns. The ninja world did seem to have guns already, but they were mostly matchlocks and flintlocks, slow, clunky, with laughable range and accuracy. Fine for civilians maybe, but definitely not for ninja. It wasn't until Boruto that someone finally whipped out a Gatling gun and nearly mowed the brat down. Now that was satisfying. Chapter 19. Ahem, in any case, gunblade-type weapons might really have great potential. Better to design it first. Since matchlocks and flintlocks were too clunky, why not make a version that used chakra to activate the ammo? And it'd be even better if a spatial ninjutsu system could be installed inside the magazine. Every shot could summon a new bullet directly, or even special bullets stuffed with explosive tags. Now that would be satisfying as hell. Tenten would probably love it. Even if she was still a little kid, her talent as a weapons specialist should make her receptive to new ninja tools. By the time they got familiar with each other, and once Tenten graduated into Guy's team, Natsuki could naturally get to know Might Guy too. The 8 gates were calling. Oi! Natsuki, your smile's getting creepy, Shino reminded him. Hey? Oh, I was just thinking about something exciting, Natsuki replied awkwardly and went back to sketching his designs. Shino raised a brow in doubt but didn't ask further. He just couldn't figure out what kind of happy thought could make someone smile like that. Only Naruto ever looked like that when fantasizing about Sakura. After school in the afternoon, Natsuki said goodbye to his friends and waited near the school gate. One by one, students from other years left campus, and before long, the person he was waiting for appeared. There she was, Tenten, her hair in 2 small buns, wearing a pink short jacket a size too small and dark green cropped pants. Cute and full of energy, yet with a hint of capability. Seriously, all the kids were cute when they were little. Sasuke was, Tenten was too. Natsuki didn't approach her immediately and instead followed silently behind. He failed to notice that Shino, who should have gone home by now, was actually peeking out from behind a utility pole not far behind. Watching Natsuki's back, Shino hesitated for a moment. Natsuki's been acting weird, so I planned to quietly observe him, but I didn't expect he'd be following a girl. It's just like how Hinata secretly stalks Naruto. No wonder he was smiling so creepily earlier, so he has a crush, huh? As a good friend, I have to investigate. Even so, he didn't hurry. With a female bug already planted on Natsuki, tracking him wasn't hard. No need to get too close and risk being discovered. Unaware of Shino tailing him, Natsuki just followed Tenten with a clear conscience. He watched her walk into a ninja tool shop and call out in a soft voice, "Papa, I'm home." So she was home. Confirmed. Her family really did run a ninja tool shop. No wonder they were so rich. Judging by how many ninja tools she threw away during the Chunin exams, she could bankrupt all of Team Kakashi on her own. He walked straight in and saw a chubby, well-fed shop owner greet Tenten with a bright, flowery smile. Tenten's parents were never mentioned in the original story, likely ordinary civilians. Whether they were still around before her graduation was unclear. But Tenten had always been cheerful apart from her frustrations with her own strength and was nothing like the ill-mannered Sakura, so she probably wasn't an orphan. When the shop owner noticed it was just a little kid entering, he immediately dropped the smile. "Hey, kid, what do you want?" Natsuki ignored him and walked right up to Tenten, putting on what he thought was a dazzling smile. "Hello, I'm Natsuki, a first year. May I know your name?" Tenten blinked but replied politely, "Hello, I'm Tenten." Natsuki followed up immediately with a compliment. "Tenten, hey? That's such a cute name. And you're really cute too." Tenten's cheeks flushed red. Clearly shy, she'd probably been praised by adults before, but never by a boy her own age. The shop owner's eyes darkened. His voice grated like nails on a chalkboard. "Kid. What are you doing here?" Was this brat trying to flirt with his precious daughter? Over his dead body. Natsuki, unfazed, pulled out 2 design drawings and handed them to Tenten. "I designed 2 special types of shuriken. I was wondering if your shop would be interested. Though, Uncle Shopkeeper, you're not a ninja, so you probably wouldn't get it." "I'll show Tenten." That did it. The owner fumed. "My family's been running a ninja tool shop for years, and you say I don't understand ninja tools." But Natsuki ignored him, focusing on Tenten as she flipped through the designs. He began explaining enthusiastically. "First, this poison shuriken. It's made from fragile wood or ceramic, and filled with poison or knockout gas. If the enemy blocks it with a kunai, it shatters and sprays the contents. Even if they don't block, you can detonate it with a seal. It's like poisoning right in their face, super effective. Then there's this wire trap shuriken. It has a mechanism inside for steel wires. The point isn't to hit the target, but to embed around the enemy on the ground or in trees. The mechanism then fires hooked wires to latch onto their clothes or skin. It's perfect for restraining and creating an opening to attack." Tenten nodded repeatedly as she looked through the designs. Despite being young, her talent in ninja tools was real. Not just in use, she had a sharp eye for design too. The shop owner peeked over and sneered, "Kid, you've got some interesting ideas, I'll give you that. But now that your designs are out, even if I don't buy them, I could just make them myself." "Dad! You can't do that!" Tenten stood akimbo, scolding him. "Natsuki clearly worked hard on these designs. Even if you don't want to buy them, you can't just steal his ideas. And anyway, I like these two shuriken. I'm buying them. Once they're made, I'm keeping them for myself." The owner instantly caved. "Papa was just joking. If Tenten wants to buy them, we'll buy them." That said, he quietly shed a tear inside. His daughter was standing up for some punk. "Curse this damn brat!" Tenten finally smiled, turning to Natsuki. "Natsuki, how much do you want for these two designs?" Natsuki replied seriously, "I'm not really sure. You probably know better than I do. And you're so cute, Tenten, I believe you wouldn't rip me off. See, cute or whatever." Tenten blushed again, then thought it over. "Let's do this, I think both of these designs are really good. I'll buy each one for 20,000 RY. That's 40,000 total, okay?" Natsuki blinked, surprised. "That much? Are you sure? Shouldn't you ask your dad?" Back when he taught Shino how to do one-handed seals, he only earned 100,000, and that was a high price agreed upon by Shino's father. He didn't expect these two blueprints to fetch 40,000 outright. But Tenten nodded firmly. "I think it's worth that much. Just take it. Besides, if you can design stuff like this at your age, I'm sure you'll come up with even better tools in the future. Promise me you'll sell those to me too." Oh, so this price was to build a relationship. That young and already this socially savvy? Natsuki didn't say more. He silently accepted the money handed over by the fuming shopkeeper, then got to the point. "So Tenten, we're friends now, right? Can I come find you often from now on?" Chapter 20. If we reach 2000 PS, I will do a 2-chapter per day schedule on this FIC. Coming by often to see Tenten, brushing up on his presence once Tenten graduated, it'd be perfectly natural to go looking for Guy's team. Wouldn't that be the chance to meet Guy? But, there were still quite a few years before Tenten graduated. He had to wait. If only he could bump into Guy someday, then he could shamelessly walk up and make friends, casually ask a few things about taijutsu, and once they got close enough, beg to learn Hachiman Tonk. The key problem was, he just couldn't bump into him. Konoha might be called a village, but it was actually huge. How could you just randomly run into someone? Sure, he could try asking around, but for a kid to suddenly inquire about a Jainin he didn't know, anyone would find that suspicious. These days, even children could be spies. All in all, Tenten was his most stable route. He had to hold onto it tight. Plus, just like Tenten said, if she came up with some good ninja tool designs, she could bring them to sell. Wouldn't that take care of living expenses? 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Tenten blushed a little at those words, nodding instinctively. We're friends now. You can come find me if you want." Natsuki smiled with satisfaction and said his goodbye, "Then I'll head home for now. See you." After leaving the ninja tool shop, Natsuki finally let out a breath of relief. Seeing it was getting late, he hurried toward home. But after only a few steps, something felt off. He suddenly turned around and saw none other than Shino, wrapped up tightly, standing behind him. Shino? What are you doing here?" Natsuki felt oddly guilty for some reason. "Sorry, Natsuki. I know everything now." Shino's sunglasses were gleaming. "I didn't follow you on purpose. I just thought you were acting a little weird and got worried, so I followed. I didn't mean to pry into your secret. You have to believe me." Natsuki was confused. "My secret? What secret?" Shino had a look like, "Don't try to fool me. You were tailing a girl in a pink vest, just like how Hinata often tails Naruto. Plus, the way you were smiling today was super sketchy, like Naruto fantasizing about Sakura liking him. So, you must like the shopkeeper's daughter from that ninja tool store. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone." What now?" Natsuki didn't expect to be misunderstood by Shino, and for a moment didn't know how to explain. Looking back on it, yeah, what he did was kind of shady. He tailed Tenten, then used the ninja tool design as a reason to approach her. First thing he did when they met was praise her for being cute. Isn't that just like Naruto? But to be fair, Tenten was really cute, and besides, he was just trying to charm the little girl. Still, hearing Shino say all that, it really did sound bad. Like, legally questionable bad. She's only 7 years old, for God's sake. But then again, maybe it's not so bad. Natsuki rubbed his chin, deep in thought. Thinking about it, of Konoha's 4 great beauties, Sakura was just a hopeless romantic, Ino was all about looks, and Hinata was timid and hopelessly devoted to Naruto. Only Tenten had the best personality. A lot of Naruto fans shipped Tenten and Neji, but honestly, there was never any real romantic development between them. At most, there might have been some mutual fondness, but before anything could happen, Neji died. Tenten never married afterward, which left many fans heartbroken. But really, even if Neji hadn't died, he probably wouldn't have considered marriage anyway. He was a victim of the clan's main and branch family system. Would he really want to have kids and watch them get branded with the caged bird seal? Better to live alone forever. As for Naruto's promise to change the Hyuga clan once he became Hokage, what changed, exactly? All that happened was that Naruto's status gave him enough face for the Hyuga clan to avoid branding Boruto and Himawari with the seal. The clan itself stayed the same. So Tenten and Neji were doomed from the start. In that case, maybe he still had a shot? Tenten really was a great girl. And on top of that, she was rich. What's wrong with clinging to a rich girl's leg? Even better, once she graduated, she'd become Guy's student. As her boyfriend, wouldn't it be totally justifiable for him to learn the Hachiman Tonk? Natsuki thought about all that and gave Shino a serious pat on the shoulder. Shino, thank you. I honestly didn't think about it like that at first. I really just went to sell some ninja tool designs. But now that you've said it, I really do think Tenten is super cute. So I've made up my mind. I'm clinging to this rich girl for dear life. You've gotta help your bro out, okay? Shino stood there blankly. From what Natsuki was saying, had he misunderstood? But, not really. It sounded like Natsuki was really planning to chase after that girl in the pink vest. So Shino nodded seriously. All right. If you ever need help, just say the word. A friend's lifelong happiness. I won't hesitate to support it. Haha. Thanks, thanks. Come on, let's go get some Ichiraku ramen, my treat. The next day after school, Natsuki dragged Shino along to Tenten's family's ninja tool shop. The moment the shopkeeper saw Natsuki, he blew up. Kid, you sure come by a lot. I'm warning you, don't even think about my daughter. Natsuki grinned and pointed at Shino. Shopkeeper Ajizan, this is my friend, Aberame Shino. Aberame Shino? From the Aberame clan. Judging by his outfit, it really was him. The shopkeeper immediately toned it down and smiled politely. Welcome. How can I help you? Looking for any ninja tools? Shino spoke coolly, we're here to see Tenten. Natsuki quickly added, I figured a day's time would be enough for her to make those 2 shuriken I designed, so I came to check them out. Is Tenten back? The shopkeeper really wanted to refuse, but since Tenten had already acknowledged Natsuki as her friend, and now there was even a kid from the Aberame clan involved, he couldn't turn them away. As a civilian, he actually hoped Tenten would make more friends, especially kids from shinobi clans like the Aberame. It'd help her when she became a ninja herself. So he said, those 2 shuriken are indeed ready. Tenten just got back and is testing them in the backyard. Come with me. Saying that, he led the 2 of them toward the rear. As they walked, Natsuki glanced around, inwardly impressed. As expected of a wealthy household, while the front of the shop looked modest, the backyard was huge. There was even a cleared training area just for Tenten. At that moment, Tenten was holding a shuriken, aiming at a wooden target. Hearing them approach, she turned around. Hey? Natsuki, you're here. And this is my friend and seatmate, Aberame Shino. We came to check out the new shuriken. Seeing Tenten's face slightly red, Natsuki found her cuter and cuter. Now that he was actually considering her, he could barely stop himself from smiling. He casually waved off the shopkeeper, thanks, shopkeeper Ajizan, you can go back to the shop now. The shopkeeper glared at this kid fiercely. Seeing his precious daughter ignoring her own dad and even blushing, he felt his heart crack. His sweet little girl had already caught some brat's eye at such a young age. This brat is so dead.
Thanks for listening.